Our Madam Clerk has given me the sign that it's 3:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday, May 4th, 2022 Roanoke County School Board Work Session. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Greenway.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Childs.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we'll jump right into the information items. Item number 2.01, request the name.
Well, I'm just noticing that those folks aren't here,
Oh, okay.
so I might need to go back to that. I called earlier in the week and confirmed the time, so maybe they're on their way.
Okay, well, we will, we'll skip over item 2.01 since
Can you, yeah, please.
Mr. Benson is not here, and we will go to item 2.02, COVID-19 funding summary update. Ms. Peterson. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I did promise Mr. Hudson I wouldn't beleaguer this and be too long, but I am not going to take too long. I do have a very long report in front of you. The first page is a summary that should look familiar because it is part of our financial reports we submit every month. So the only thing that I have added to this is a column for unfinished learning. You'll see that's a little bit different. Every page behind that is the very specific details for each of the grants. And you'll see in each of those pages where I identified what is included in the unfinished learning pieces. So just going from the bottom of the page up to the top of the page, because that's the order in which we have received the different amounts of money. Down at the bottom is FEMA, and we did receive FEMA money in for fiscal year of June ending of June of 2020. We did use this for cleaning supplies and it was spent already. Moving up to the next kind of grouping of money was the CARES, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funds of March of 2022. We did receive $7.2 million, and we only have $330,697 remaining. We do plan to fully spend this by the end of the current fiscal year. The deadline is September, so we will fully meet this deadline.
One question. So this will take care of our lunches?
Of our,
Will this take care of lunches for next year?
we, not out of this pot, out of a different pot.
Right, okay.
Not
All right.
lunches for next year, but we are gonna fund the elementary lunches, out of one of the programs
Okay,
for the summer,
For the summer.
For the summer.
Summer,
School
only
year.
yeah, summer,
only the
Yes.
summer.
yeah.
Okay, so then, the majority of what we spent, the CARES Act money, that first pot, was for distance learning, food programs, capital facility improvements, and operations to accommodate opening in August of 2020, and also to start adding our full classes back in as we started to grow and convert our cafeterias into classrooms. All of the construction and building additions that we made to put in the technology to bring these students back, all of these different costs were included in this first pot. So then the second pot of money we received, we only got 3 little grants from the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. This is $5.3 million. This expires in September of 2023. We have 39% left that we can spend. This will include what we will spend in the current year for summer school and next year's summer school, because we are ending our summer schools at the end of June 30th. And so that'll include 2 summer schools. And it will also include a couple other items for next year. The majority of the allocations out of this funding source was distance learning, unfinished learning, capital facility upgrades, and some other staffing and operating needs. The largest pot of money that we received is in that top group. That is the most recent batch of funds that was handed out in March of 2021. This is the American Rescue Plan Act funds. These grants do expire September of 2024, and we have 71% of these funds remaining. And we do plan to spend these funds over the next 2 fiscal years. And as you recall, as we were going through the budget process, there are certain items that we couldn't fund in our budget, but we were able to pull into these grants here. So we will have to keep our eyes out on how we can pull some of those staffings into our regular budget as we see fit going forward, so we don't hit that fiscal cliff in 2024. Most of this money was spent on instructional support, unfinished learning, and capital facility upgrades. A lot of the upgrades are HVAC air quality improvements. So really just a really high-level summary of kind of where we are and what we have. All of the detail pages will be posted on our website with the rest of the reporting that we have out there. So if you have any questions?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a question, but I do have a statement related to this, and I didn't get to talk to everybody that had the breakout sessions with SAC group, but I did see Mike on the way out, and we got to compare notes a little bit. And there's a couple of things, you know, and I've told those kids to hold us accountable, and I've asked them to specifically hold me accountable, and we're going to go back and we're going to revisit this. I'd like to do that with Tammy and Dr. Nicely, Miss Newcomb, I should say, and Dr. Nicely, you know, because I do want to follow up. They had some very concerned comments that I want us to follow up on. One being, and so I'm hoping these ESSER funds, the only reason I bring that up, ESSER, COVID, whatever, you know, we got about 8 names for them. One was the counselors and the mental health, and I don't know if you other, I know Cheryl, you weren't there, but the other guys, if y'all heard this too, but we heard a lot about the counselors being so driven about classes that it was hard for them to give the mental health aspect of the counseling or to, you know, address issues that were related to something other than, you know, getting their coursework and their classwork
Be
done.
available.
Yeah, being
Yeah,
available.
they weren't available, and
Didn't have time to be, and they weren't
Yeah.
knocking on the counselors as much as they were knocking that they just didn't have the time. And so where I see that coming in is more with the remediation. And in all honesty, and I told them this, personally, I haven't been as concerned with the high school remediation because I was so concerned with the elementary remediation. Because if they don't get the foundational info and, you know, are brought along, then they're going to be so far out. But I think, and I don't know if the other board members feel that way, but I feel like I've probably not been as concerned at the high school level. So with these funds, I would just like to be cognizant of some of that at the high school level. And I think as I go through these talks, I'm hoping that we develop what needs or what help could be done. And I know, you know, this is one of those I told you so moments, Dr. Nicely. I'm not a huge counselor fan, or I don't know if that's the right word.
I don't think you mean that.
No, I don't mean it. No, I don't mean it like that. But you know what? I'm not a. You know, I think sometimes. Anyway, I think maybe I need to re-educate myself in that respect, I guess. But the point is that I think there's a huge need that maybe we've not paid attention to, and it's more because we think the older kids have the ability to catch up or to do the things that are necessary to be successful. Even heard from the special, or not the special, but the advanced course folks and the dual credits that, you know, they were just struggling mightily, which, you know, usually you think those kids, they're not going to have any trouble. You know, they'll pick it up. Just, you know, stick them in the class, they'll get it. But I heard a lot of that. So, again, maybe that was just our cross-section, but I think after speaking to Mike, it really was.
yeah.
Maybe.
And Ms. Falciani and I are gonna meet after this and bring her up to speed. And a lot of it was, you know, of the mental health issues. And they don't feel like maybe they're being listened to with issues that come up, or who to go to, really. And I think that was, you know, a real important aspect for them. And I mean, I imagine the most of the meeting was talked about was mental health.
Yeah, and mine too, my session as well.
And
I
that
think
was
it-
really,
It would be short-sighted of us not to use or put together some type of program for the high schoolers in this fashion.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing issue. It's COVID accelerated it, and we need to address it.
Yeah.
Especially when we talked about that JMU soccer
Exactly.
player who just took her
The
life.
JMU girl that
And
just,
she was the perfect kid, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
So-
they had,
That highlights it.
Let me
Yeah.
ask this
Didn't
question.
have it all.
So I know you implemented the life skills counselors. So
Life
I-
counselors.
I was familiar with the SAP when I was inside the school. So is that essentially what our life counselors are doing now?
Yeah, it was really an effort, because the SAP program was really primarily geared toward like substance abuse issues,
Right.
if you recall. And so, there was a recognition that, hey, our students are really experiencing issues and concerns, far beyond just that. We really need to kind of transform that program and, bring in people who actually have, licensed mental health background to really, serve that purpose. And so, we invested, I guess 4 years now ago, in transforming that program, getting in different, people with different, licensure and expertise to really address those kind of things. So, and it actually expanded that program. So, but it sounds like that, there's maybe some students who either aren't aware or, maybe some communication that needs to happen, or we need to kind of dig deeper into that.
So where does the line start where the life counselor and then the school counselor takes over? Like, I'm assuming the school counselor is higher certification or more service?
Different, yeah, and probably what we need to do is get Dr. Hughes in to kind of explain that, because I would do it injustice. But school counseling is a specific field that, does all of the above. Mr. Greenway mentioned you're doing the academic counseling, right? I mean, like what classes should I take? What are career paths? And they're trained in that field. They're also trained in, working with mental health issues and so forth. The life counselor is more of a specialty. Is probably the best way to describe it,
Okay.
kind of at a high level.
Well, I had spoken to one of our counselors in my district, and that's kind of something that was asked of me. They feel like they're kind of overrun, kind of like what you're talking about, is they just physically can't do everything that needs to be done, but yet the life counselor can't fill that gap. So it may be a good idea to get with Dr. Hughes and let's figure out what we need to kind of bridge where we're falling back.
And from Mr. Hudson's point, I guess the kids were saying, they see that too, from their side, is that they don't have the time to.
Right. I mean, one of my
School counselor
counselors,
side.
one of the school
Right.
counselors,
Have Dr. Hughes put together a report, because they're very different roles, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to work with Dr. Hughes on that.
I would love to see that because, like I said, I spoke directly to one of our counselors not too long ago, and she made that comment. So with you saying that, it kind of, if the kids are seeing it, then that's maybe a bigger problem.
Well, it's
than we
like,
thought.
it's like a lot of things, right? I mean, schools are, taking on more and more,
Right.
right? And, unfortunately, state funding hasn't kept pace. I mean, I think our folks do an awesome job, but yeah, I mean, the needs are great. So I think it's something, I appreciate y'all bringing it up and discussing it, because I think it's something we need to continually to look at and value.
And if I could just add, I know we're talking about high schoolers, but my understanding is middle schoolers are also struggling with
They
mental
are.
health issues too.
Sure.
So I don't want to neglect that
They
group
are.
either. One of my daughter's friends came up to me just the other day, and she was still wearing the wristband from Your Life Speaks. And I said, hey, you still have that on? She said, I look at this every day, and it makes me so happy because that was so important to me. So these little programs that we can bring in really strikes a chord with these kids, and it starts a conversation. So I think we should definitely develop a team maybe.
You bring up a
look at it.
program, I want to say, this is kind of a little bit of a, maybe we need to change the approach on one. Whatever the one we do at the beginning of the year, and I'm not sure what that is, but I've heard it talked about by some teachers at the high school level before. They were really wondering, it was so juvenile to them in the way it wasn't done, like the ones we did a few years ago with Nancy Hans and the Prevention Council meant so much more. But they said the one at the beginning of the year is just, and I don't know what other words to use other than really juvenile to what
program would that be?
issues they see.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'd
talk to
heard.
Ms. Newcomb about it and find
Yeah.
out, 'cause I have no idea.
Yeah, and I'd heard that, well, I'm not saying Ms. Newcomb said, but I had heard.
Was it from Bird students though? That's why I was
Oh,
asking.
yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
I have no
yeah,
idea what that
yeah,
was.
Yeah, and I'll have to find, and I've got the sheet at the office, I'm gonna put a little summary together, and then I wanna circle back around with them.
You know, we do have subcommittees that we work on things with, right? Maybe this could be one of our subcommittees.
Yeah, I don't know, there's one in place currently, but
Well, we have a whole staff
Yeah.
that works with counseling issues and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking or saying,
Like as a
but.
school
I think
board,
it would
don't
be
we?
Yeah.
helpful to lay out what the roles
Yeah.
of both the school counselor and the life counselor are, and the programming that we have in place now, and the data that we have over the past couple of years, because we do have data from each school. And I think that would be helpful just to make sure everybody's aware of that, and then we can talk about maybe some suggestions we've heard.
Okay, that sounds like a good.
Does the actual counseling go back to elementary?
Yes.
Well, and something else is how many counselors do we have per student? You know, some schools that are
Yeah,
bigger are
so-
going to
So
have
there's what
two
the
or three.
SOQ requires, and there's what we do. We always go above and beyond what's required, but actually, there's a proposal to change the SOQs which is good. I mean, it's recognition at the state level. Again, need to continue to advocate with our state legislator to fully fund our SOQs, but we exceed what the requirement
What
is.
demand, the minimum.
Yeah. And our life counseling program, I mean, that's something that's a Roanoke County program. That's not something that's required all out of state.
Right.
well, let's face it, I mean, mental health issues are not an easy topic to bring up, and it doesn't surprise me that our leadership council was doing that last week. But I do think if there are unallocated ESSER funds that we may not have earmarked for, and we have till 2024 to spend it, I think that's something we should focus on. So,
I agree.
Yep. Totally.
In looking at these numbers, the HVAC replacement and improvement, when we know HVAC expenses are going up, as is everything right now, is there a reason we haven't started to use HVAC funding yet? Because those prices, we'll get more bang for our buck the sooner we use that money based on the pricing of HVAC systems. Is there a reason we haven't started to spend that 2.4 million?
Well, Mr. Lowe and his team have a schedule of which schools are going to be implemented at what times, because they're pretty big projects. They're not small projects. And so I think they're maybe out to bid for the first grouping already, possibly.
Is it mostly design? We're in design phases for most of that work right now. And we'll be out to bid this summer on most of the jobs, and then hopefully for winter installation or construction, winter, spring.
If I recall correctly, isn't that some of that boiler stuff we've talked about, the boilers that need to be
Boilers and
replaced?
cooling towers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anything else on your report? Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you.
All right, we'll circle back to item number 2.01, request to name the field at Hidden Valley Middle School for retired teacher and coach.
Yeah, Mr. Lynn, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. My instruction from Mr. Benson was, because school gets out at 3:25, they probably could get here about 4:15. And I had inadvertently put them first because thinking as visitors, we would do that. But they're actually going to be here a little bit later.
Oh, so they're still
we'll
not
They're not, no. And that's by design. So,
Okay.
and that
Very
was my
good.
fault.
We
All
won't be
right.
done by 4:15?
We will not.
Item 2.03, discussion of options for the Hidden Valley High School soccer fields. Mr. Lowe.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Nicely. I've been asked to provide some information regarding the cost of artificial turf versus the cost of maintaining Bermuda or cool weather grasses for sports fields. I've included a chart here in your board report. The following chart shows the cost of installing artificial turf soccer field and the request for funds to maintain it yearly, or required funds to maintain it yearly, and projecting replacement in 10 years versus the annual cost of maintaining a Bermuda or cool weather field for those same 10 years. For a soccer field, which just for everyone's understanding, a soccer field is actually larger than a football stadium field. Thus, that's why we're looking at a $1.4 million cost for a soccer field turf installation. There's much more square footage, and then so with that, there is also a longer perimeter of concrete work and drainage work that has to take place, and also excavation work, earthwork. So $1.4 million would be the upfront investment for a artificial turf field for soccer. The yearly maintenance cost of that would be zero because the maintenance is strictly grooming the field, which we would, ADs or coaches would take that responsibility as done at our other turf fields. And the yearly replacement cost, which we would consider as part of a 10-year plan, would be $40,000 a year for a total of $400,000 a year. So we estimate 10 years, even though we got 13 out of one previous installation. With 10 years is the number that the industry pretty much recommends you start thinking about replacement. It's better be safe than sorry on that instance. If we were to put a Bermuda grass field, the one-time investment would be about $50,000. Yearly maintenance, which this yearly maintenance cost does include mowing, is $30,000 for a $300,000 10-year maintenance cost. And you can see it's lower than the cost of replacing a field turf in 10 years. The existing current condition for a cool grass field, obviously there would be no one-time investment. Yearly maintenance cost is about $12,000. And so a 10-year maintenance replacement cost for a cool grass soccer field would be $120,000, significantly lower than turf or Bermuda. There's advantages obviously to all, and there's cons to all as well. If we put a turf field in, and I pretty much put the field in, and I walk away and maybe see it 5 or 6 times over the next 10 years when hash marks and things like that start to come up here and there. But the maintenance of that,
you still have to use the machine.
You still have to use the machine, but that would be, like I said, right now we have the ADs and coaches doing that on our other fields.
Right.
Those machines are about 65,000?
No, sir, they're about $8,000 or $10,000, and that's included in the $1.4 million
Oh, that's
cost.
in
It's included with the installation.
Oh, that other machine was for Bermuda, maybe?
The real mowers.
All real mowers are about $35,000, if you can get one.
Right.
Obviously, there's some advantages to Bermuda, but there's also some disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage to the Bermuda is its aesthetics. In our climate, you do not start seeing the Bermuda really pop until mid-May, and then it usually, the first freeze, which we've been known to get them in September, and it will turn brown within days. And then you have a brown field from September, October, all the way into the following May. A lot of schools will just paint their fields with black paint, and it stands out, or they'll overseed in the fall with a perennial rye and then kill the rye off in the spring right before the Bermuda pops. That way they have a green playing surface for their spring season sports or fall season sports in the case of football. So that is one of the disadvantages to the Bermuda. The advantage is it grows and self-heals, but between the spring sports and the fall sports, it pretty much rejuvenates itself into a brand new field over the summer. One of the disadvantages is you do have to mow it 3 to 4 times easily a week to ensure that it doesn't overgrow and cause itself damage. And so it is time consuming in that sense. Cool grass, it just does not repair. There's a lot of maintenance that has to go on with cool grass. If you get out there and play in a wet condition or practice in a wet condition, you muddy it up and that cool grass just doesn't heal itself. You have to go back out, you have to aerate, you have to overseed, you have to rake out the lumps and the mud clumps and do that kind of work. But it is green all year round. Through the winter as well. So there's advantage of the cool grass as well. And you only do have to mow that, I say once a week, but I think some of our fields are being mowed 2 to 3 times a week right now just because it's the growing season. So there's some advantages in that sense with the maintenance of it, the cost of maintenance as well. So that is for a typical soccer field. I also did a price comparison for an infield on baseball. We talked about this last September. About the cost of installing infield turf for a baseball field and then maintaining an outfield grass. And that one-time investment would be $250,000 for infield turf. Yearly maintenance costs, obviously for the infield turf, there would not be any yearly maintenance cost. There would be about $4,000 worth of yearly maintenance costs for the outfield steel. And then the yearly replacement cost for the infield turf would be approximately $18,000 a year for a replacement cost of $180,000 in about 10 years. So total cost of an infield turf and outfield 10-year period would be about $220,000. compared to $150,000 over a 10-year period for just an infield, outfield, regular cool weather grass.
So getting onto the fields, and I think this is probably, I'm not sure if you have any problems out your way, Tim, in some of your fields. I know that I've got some issues over on our middle school side. You know, the more I looked into it, we got an issue with the irrigation, which probably leads to some dead grass and mud holes and things like that. And I know we've had some problems with the contractor that we're currently using to get things done in a timely fashion. I guess from my perspective, it seems like you know a lot more about grass and groundskeeping than I do. So what is your recommendation on what we need to do to provide a safe and nice playing field for everybody across the board? Obviously, turf, we can't afford to just turf every field in the county. So do you have anything in your mind that would rectify this problem and get us where we need to be and maintain it?
Well, I think we've started by just this year's operating budget by operations department taking over and maintaining these fields. So we know we're going to get some consistency. We're not going to have to worry about coaches not knowing what to do or ADs not knowing what to do. We're being trained on how to do it. They're not supposed to be an agronomist or a horticulturist, so we're not asking them to do that. We have someone on contract to do that work and make the recommendations to our staff, and we're going to put together a schedule, and we're going to make sure that the treatments on the fields get taken care of when they're supposed to get taken care of, the aerations get taken care of, overseeding and top dressing. We're going to have someone on contract to do that work for us.
So-
Let me add something else, though, to answer your question, because I think there's a bigger picture here.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to get
I mean,
at.
you're right, because we've had the same conversation with, several ADs. There's a history here of how things have typically been done over the years. I mean, I go back, 20, 30, 40 years, right? In a prior time, and we still have some of this, but you had, coaches who you could hire and were able to and wanted to, do a lot of that maintenance and so forth, which is great. And that's why you see, there's been a lot of sweat equity and put into, boosters clubs and individual people over the years. What the reality is, I think over time is, it goes back to the previous conversation. More and more has been put on schools in terms of what people are responsible for and that kind of thing. And, the reality is, the schools are having a hard time finding people who are willing to do all of that. So, probably rightfully so, a lot of that responsibility, probably needs to come over to operations. I need to get him some help with that because it's almost like a full-time
Right.
thing to keep up with all that. So I just for some context there, and this is something I think that sort of evolved over time, and the reality in terms of where we are now is probably, as a district, more of that financial responsibility as well as, we obviously don't have the staff to physically do it, but, like as Mr. Lowe's point now, even contracting now with people, that still requires, man hours to even keep on top of all that and make sure that gets done. So just some bigger picture context there to answer your question.
Right. And I imagine football is probably the only sport that can somewhat help maintain money-wise.
Oh, sure, schools,
it's gonna be
they're
hard
taking in
for
gate receipts
soccer
for
and
those
other-
big
right.
things, but but they're, and Dr. Seagal's given their presentation, which is why we've put in our budget to try to up their allotments a bit, but it's still not enough, but.
So do you think with the cool grass, going with the plan that we're talking about moving forward, that we're going to fertilize it, aerate it, take care of it ourselves, and obviously we got to fix some of these irrigation issues that we have on some of the fields. Do you feel that that's going to fix the problem overall? I know we're not going to have NFL level grass on the field on some of these fields, but is that going to alleviate?
I think it's going to alleviate a lot of the issues we've had where fields become unsafe over a certain period of time. I think that will alleviate that problem.
And that's my concern. And I walked a field with a parent last week. I got a phone call, and I said, sure, I'll come out and walk it with you. Her daughter supposedly had tore her MCL in a hole, so I thought, well, I'm going to come out and take a look. And there's some significant damage to the field and holes and things like that. So I definitely think that we have a problem that we all probably need to go out to our own fields and take a look at.
Well, I'll tell you the way to solve it is to do what Bird does. You have one playing surface and one practice surface, and that's it. It's not optimal because we're on the same campus.
We're on
Y'all
the
may
same
have
campus at
more
Glenwood
room,
and Northside as well.
but our one turf field does football, high school, JV football, it does lacrosse, soccer, it does all those. And then we've got the one practice field. Our middle school doesn't even have it's got a little area behind it's a retention pond.
So is your middle
So
school
that's-
playing on the turf field?
Mhm.
And see, I kind of posed that question, but, you know.
It's the only field we've got. We don't have a choice.
Except that.
And in baseball, let me just finish this point, in baseball and softball, we got one field.
Well, it definitely
We
makes
don't
sense
have-
if it's possible to schedule that with all the other sports that are playing track and everything at one time, if it's possible to
It's hard,
schedule
but
it.
that's
then
all
it's-
we have.
You know, that definitely makes sense and
Well-
it saves a lot of money.
Because of those scheduling issues, though, I mean, we learned today, the middle school there is having to play a lot of their soccer games on one of the Bermuda fields. That's not something that, we were aware
Yeah,
of.
that's a good
So
point.
to answer your original question about are these things gonna take care of it? I think we need to have a better, even bigger assessment. I think these are the steps in the right direction. But, I mean, after some conversations we've had today, I know, Mr. Lowe kind of, put out there, we really need to sit down with the ADs and principals and say, okay, let's make sure we're all on the same page, like what are your needs in different areas? Even when it comes to like the maintenance of the Bermuda field, right? I know the one over at Burr was put in like 4 years ago, but there's still some questions about, okay, who's doing the aeration, who's doing because what I've learned from my, I'm not what was that word you used?
Agronomist?
Yeah, I'm not one of those.
Yeah.
But what I have learned is, I mean, you've got the one bucket that you guys decided to put in the operating budget for next year, which is great, which is starting July 1st, taking care of some of that maintenance. But that maintenance is aeration, that's top dressing, that's overseeding, okay? That's one bucket. You got another bucket of the weed kill and that kind of stuff that has to happen, much less if you want to plant your ryegrass for Bermuda to make it look good in the spring,
Well,
right?
what
Because
about
it
like
doesn't.
laser leveling and some of the things that we may not be able
That's
to.
either another bucket, right?
And,
And you got the mowing,
Right.
right, which is another bucket.
right. Well, and going out and speaking with this mother, I feel for him. I mean, she was waiting on the results from an MRI, so,
It's terrible. It is.
Yeah, I
So
mean.
the reason why I asked Chris to do this analysis was I had the same thing as Brent did. 2 or 3 parents contact me, and they're graduating. They're not even going to be playing next year, But she said, I just don't want this to happen to somebody else's child, and I applaud her for that. So she's been very concerned, and her daughter, the same thing, was hurt. And I think we have a responsibility to make sure our kids are on safe playing surfaces. And it seems like there's a lot of juggling. So I like what you said, Ken. I think if we could all come together with some of the ADs, and I asked John Michael to come, because there's a lot of questions that I can't answer that he can. Who's playing here when? We share Bogle, Hidden Valley and Cave Spring share, and the days that it's muddy, the soccer team can't play, and then they tear up the field, and then, it's very confusing to me. And I don't know how you do it, John Michael, to keep it all straight. And that, in addition, the amount of timing that you have to spend to coordinate all that stuff, like you were saying. So, I was talking with David, and I just asked him a question, who is in other school districts, who maintains the fields? What does Montgomery County do? What
Parks
does?
and Rec.
It seems like the answer, maybe you can find this out for all of us and call them, it seems like Parks and Rec are maintaining their fields, and, I like to consider that as a board, is that a direction we want to go in, so that we make sure that our fields are safe for our children?
The thing you
I
have
think
to
we've
worry
had
about
some-
there is opening up 2 Parks and Rec to be able to play on those fields.
We had
A
Doug
lot of
Blunt
times
come
They want to play
about
on
3
them.
years ago and make a presentation on what it would cost to move over to have Parks and Rec maintain all our fields, and at the time, it was not determined that was within our budget, but I know Botetourt County Parks and Rec maintain the fields at their facilities, Franklin County, Bedford County, Montgomery County, they don't rely on coaches to do that, and I think it's past time that we find a way to have some professionals maintaining our facilities. I had a chance to go walk the field over there at this field today at Hidden Valley, and we had some work done last year, is that correct?
Last fall, yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it is in better condition than Northside Stadium Field, in my opinion, because I walked that about 2 weeks ago. I went over to Cave Spring today and took a look at their field. It's in similar shape. Would it be nice to put turf over there? It'd be nice to put turf everywhere, but that's not realistic.
No, it's not realistic.
What would it be, can we find out and go back and find the maintenance, whether or not, I don't know why something's sticking in my mind about $750,000 to, to maintain. Maybe that's not correct. I can't remember.
That may include mowing.
Mowing and everything.
It was a big number for all our
It was
fields,
a
but
pretty
I
big
can't
number.
remember
The
what it was.
reason we sort of did, can we revisit and what it would be? I mean, I don't know what staff you would need to do it. And that would be, it benefits, everything that would be involved.
Do we still have the report that we did for all the schools with the fields?
Well, from Parks and Rec that he did. I think we can go back and pull that together and have that conversation with Doug Blunt again and say, hey, is this something that you?
We had a company come in and do that too, didn't we? Assess all of our fields.
It was.
Yeah, that was more
Oh,
recent.
sure, right,
That was more
facility
recent.
study, yeah.
And Angela just sent that back out to
Yeah,
us.
I looked at
Okay,
it.
2
y'all
weeks
have
ago.
already seen that.
Yeah. So, I just have a question for John Michael. With the mowing and being an AD and hearing from the coaches, my thought is it's an awful lot to put on our coaches to be mowing grass. It's already hard enough as it is to get coaches, but how much extra time are these coaches having to put in to mow the grass?
Typically 2 or 3 times a week, you'll have, your coaches, and we fortunately have built in some duties into our master schedule, in which we have coaches that go out and have that as an assignment. They take care of that for us, and, they do an excellent job in that regard, but it is an extra, expectation of them, if you will, to have to maintain their fields. In addition, when you've got, a big baseball game coming up and you're talking about, just yourself trying to go down there and drag and get things prepared, and when you used to enjoy having, big support and parent support booster clubs and multiple assistant coaches that would all pitch in and do that stuff. And then as, we've discussed and talked about the natural transition, you have less and less people, in many instances, willing and wanting to pitch in and do that for you. So we're just kind of being, it's kind of a culmination of multiple factors here that have reared their head. And, in our case at Hidden Valley specifically, we're just dependent on our coaches to really try and maintain their fields in addition to being coaches. And so that's just becoming harder and harder to attract good quality coaches that are willing to come in for, $3,000 and $4,000 stipends, in addition to, and by the way, from mid-February, throughout, your seasons and into the summer, preparing for the fall, we'd like for you to come in and mow multiple times a week. I mean, that's just a very tall task and a very tall ask.
Yeah, we're finding that we had that with Scott Fisher over at Northside, and I think he's still having to do some of that. So, it is a bit of, I mean, it's, the days of coaches, wanting to coach and the love of, being out there all the time, it's not, I mean, it's not the way of yesteryear, because a lot of them did like that. I know the Bird, we're going through that at Bird with the baseball, and now Jason being the coach, he's got to do that, and that's a huge task.
Well, and I can also tell you, and Mr. Linden, and we do appreciate his presence today, coming out and taking a look at our fields and going around and making an assessment. But for us, it's one of those things that a decade ago, right, there were a lot of schools that had cool grass. But if you look at our soccer schedule and lacrosse schedules, the only team that we compete against is Pulaski County that also has cool grass. So as our parents are continually going to, Blacksburg, Christiansburg, Salem, Cave Springs, Bermuda, and they're over at Bird, and what they're seeing when they come back to our school is, well, this doesn't look as nice, right? And naturally, when you're playing, on that Bermuda surface or you're playing on that turf surface, it's not that we have, an awful playing field. I think you could attest to that today. I mean, as you just said, it's a nice field, but the reality is that, once you've been in a Mercedes, it makes it a little difficult to go back to that Honda, right? I mean, that's the reality. They're seeing this great stuff, and now they're just not simply as content with what they've got, so.
So is Hidden Valley the only school out of the entire Roanoke County that still has cool grass?
That would be used for soccer.
That's for soccer?
Yes. So we're definitely the only cool grass
So
site.
y'all don't play at Bogle for soccer?
No, we don't. We have lacrosse, so between our JV and
Well, we have
varsity,
lacrosse
boys and
too,
girls
so,
lacrosse is-
yeah, we play it all, right?
You
there.
know it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
One
we
field.
can't get our soccer team to get to Bogle?
When you're talking about Cave Spring Middle School, who also has boys and girls soccer there, in addition to putting Cave Spring High School boys and girls lacrosse JV varsity and Hidden Valley High School boys and girls lacrosse JV varsity, I mean, you may be talking a few games that we could potentially move over there, but not enough to alleviate a lot of the wear and tear on that field. I mean, there are a lot of scheduling constraints, as you alluded to earlier, that would prevent you from being able to do that.
See, and I'm sympathetic to all this, but again, when we go back to one field, one practice field, we don't have junior high schools with separate fields, high schools with separate fields for each sport, not just one field, but separate sports in each field.
So is that a
It's-
possibility to do that? I mean.
Yeah, we'd love it. If we'll buy, or just the county would give us Stonebridge and build some new fields, we'd love to have that. Then our two schools wouldn't have to use the same facility, so.
And I can tell you, we utilize Starkey. I mean, I work very closely with Parks and Rec and Alan Hayes and Jay Glenn, and, they're more often, more than nice enough to help us get our baseball and softball teams over there when we need to utilize that for practice or games. And so, we try and take advantage of that, but the reality is that, when you're talking about soccer coaches and, having practices at Vogel Stadium after the middle school teams have had their practices, you start talking, rotating 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, right? You don't want teams and your kids out there 3-4 days a week, on top of having their game schedules to be practicing, 7 and 8 o'clock at night, So obviously we want them to put their instruction first and their academics first. So that creates some of the reasoning behind when you have your boys and girls soccer teams that are practicing on our soccer field, they're going out there every day, typically right after school. And, they're trying to get in there and they work together and we rotate them off on the sides. And, I've got Coach Bernard here who's with me, that could speak to some of that. I mean, we do a good job trying to preserve as much as we can of that playing surface, but it is not Bermuda and it doesn't bounce back like Bermuda does and it's not near as
That's a good
dense.
point. That's a good, now the Bermuda I kind of get because that way you can play on it more.
Right.
Well, and one issue too is your transportation. I know over on the Glenver side, our middle school baseball, softball, they'll go over to Green Hill, but yet they'll have to wait an hour for a bus to get back before they can actually get over there. So it kind of shrinks down the practice time.
But again, I just think you guys can appreciate, as people see this and you're going from one county school to the next and you're able to look at, what these other schools have and the facilities that they have. And then you obviously go outside of our division and you're seeing what they have. Sometimes, again, it just makes you want to pursue and be loud with us when we go to a Booster Club meeting or we're, at soccer games and events. It's nothing for parents to come up and just say, hey, we really like for you guys to push for this. We're one of the few schools that still has a cool grass field. And of course, the counter argument, and Mr. Linden and I talked about that today, was, well, we're one of the few schools that have a soccer-only stadium, right? So we understand that immediate counter to the argument. But when we're talking about just, the surface itself, not the venue, it's a lot of wear and tear to put on that field. And so obviously if Bermuda could be a potential answer for that, I think Mr. Lowe's been working diligently on trying to get us some of those answers. And we're excited about, the future, whatever that holds.
And your band practices on that field.
Yes, they do, absolutely. They'll start late July and continue all the way through, obviously football season into late October, early November.
Well, in some of these schools, they operate one school. They don't operate 5 different high schools.
Right.
Like you mentioned Salem and some of the other, well, it'd be nice if we only had 1 or 2 fields to maintain, but we've
But
got quite a few.
that was always the answer for Parks and Rec, right? When I'd say, hey, any way we can get you guys to help out with this or that, and they're like, well, in Botetourt Sports Complex, you're talking about 4 fields, or at Moyer, you're talking about 4 fields. When you're talking to, our Parks and Rec department, they might be talking about, well, we've got 60 fields, or parks, or, so of course, it is a much larger division, and that's typically what we find when I go to district meetings and region meetings. They'll discuss that amongst themselves and with us, that, well, you guys are in a much larger division, and it may not be as easy as for, Pulaski County, Montgomery County, et cetera, to kind of just attack their problems because they don't have near as many as we do.
Mr. Chairman, I want to point out that Mr. Ray has an incredibly good memory. Ms. Peterson was just showing me from 2020, the numbers we did get from Parks and Rec were about the ballpark figure combined that you cited. Now, on the list, I will say, 'cause it's all a matter of what the words mean, right? So the list says maintaining. I don't recall, I don't know if you do, we can circle back around what that means. Like,
Is that aeration? Is that
exactly,
cutting? Is that
mowing,
yeah,
right.
Overseeding.
Because all those buckets, I'll make
Yeah.
sure it's all included.
And that was my question. So when Chris was mentioning your operational costs that you're done now, that's not cutting, obviously.
No, I mean,
Yeah, that's everything but.
yes, that's correct.
And then for the schools that do have Bermuda, what mowers are they using to cut it? Because that's an expensive mower. It's a special blade, I understand. Again, this is all new for me, but can you elaborate a little bit
Sure,
on
William
that?
Byrd has a real mower. Northside has a real mower, even though that's contracted out to a company to do the mowing. They do have a real mower.
We still mow ours.
Yes, you do.
So when we had that
Go
conversation
figure.
with Mr. Dees and Mr. Willow today, just to try to figure this out too. so to Northside High School, the stadium field, we contracted out the mowing there, and that's because of the other football fields having the artificial turf. So something different's done for Northside High School because of that. But, I mean, if we were to put Bermuda on the soccer field at Hidden Valley High School, I mean, you're hearing from Mr. Dees, and I mean, I agree. I mean, I really think that we would need to look at, funding the cost of maintaining, doing the mowing there. And so then you look, okay, where else does that exist in terms of playing field? Well, Cave Spring High School, their soccer field, they, as Bermuda, and they do it. Then I learned today that their middle school at Byrd is needing to use one of their Bermuda fields for games.
Yeah, we
So,
just can't physically schedule.
yeah, so I mean, I think the aeration thing, I think those are all things that really, from a, equals a different word because each place is a little different in terms of what they have, but in terms of equity and make it fair, I think those are things we'd have to consider.
I think it should be consistent. And what it does, it seem to me, being a new school board member, it's not really consistent. There's not a plan in place. It's kind of hit or miss. Well, this person pushed for this and then they got it. I'd like to see us, Ken, as a division, come together and have a plan like we do for our scoreboards now that you're going to propose later. And we can just say, this is where we're moving, this is the direction, and we're going to allocate this amount of funding, and we're going to get everybody caught up.
Well, can we back up a slide? Because I think it had, to turn the field to Bermuda, what was the cost?
50K.
50,000. But the yearly maintenance cost is 30,000 versus
And
12,000.
that number does include mowing.
Does or does not?
The 30,000 does.
So that's where the big difference is versus the 12 and 30?
Yes. The mowing is about $9,000 of that 30.
Okay.
Because it takes more,
3 times a week, about
Yeah.
$500 a week for mowing.
and I know we did the boosters put it in at Cave Spring, but, keeping it maintained, it's
The
still.
county maintains it. The
No.
boosters,
Not at Cave
No,
Spring.
John
Mr.
Hartness.
Hartness
No.
Hartness can take,
county does it, and the parents mow it. Is that right? Mike?
No.
No, I'm confused.
Mr. Hartness mows that
Hartness.
field.
Hartness mows.
Yeah, the AD, he
Okay.
does it.
And
And-
Jason does it. at
He
Byrd, I'm
likes
assuming.
to keep it like he wants it, but that's the way he is.
He's pretty particular.
So is the other cost just a different type of fertilization or?
The rest of the cost is aeration, top dressing, overseeding, fertilizations, herbicides.
Versus the cool grass only being 12,000 a year?
Yes.
But who pays for what you just said at the other schools, like at Cave Spring?
The schools do.
We
This-
do our own.
For the aeration?
Well,
Baseball
currently, but
fields,
not,
up
not
to-
as of July 1st.
Not as of July 1st.
For game fields.
As of July 1st, I'll be taking
We've
that.
been doing it.
Okay,
Right.
But the schools have done it up to this point.
up to the point, so
We're trying to get there in terms of
try
the
to get there to
consistency,
make it
but,
consistent.
right.
So really, the cost then it's gonna be 30,000 for every single field, minus whatever the cost was for mowing,
It's about 18,000
18,000.
a year per field.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
But no,
love-
you're, just, we're all hearing the same thing. You're 12,000 for a cool grass. That does not include mowing, right?
Does not.
Right. Just make sure we're comparing apples to oranges or whatever, I mean.
Last fall, when we talked to the ADs about, a lot of the ADs wanted to maintain their own mowing because they have, they're particular about their fields, and so are the coaches about when they get mowed before games or after games. So that was something they wanted to kind of keep in-house for the most part.
And not that we can't look at that, because as you're hearing, I mean, that's become more and more of a burden. We might need to take it on, but we just need to figure out at what cost and making sure. we can
Another
find it.
idea would be to offer stipends to the coaches who are doing it. My concern is, again, the coaches, it's hard to find coaches who want to continue to coach.
And who even have time to do
They
it,
have
but,
time,
yeah,
and
right.
then, so you could lose a good coach because he just had a couple kids, and over the summer, he doesn't want to come in on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
We
and
have
mow
done that.
grass.
That's a good point, yeah.
So,
So currently, we're not paying anybody to mow our fields, we're just maintaining that ourselves.
Yeah, the only ones we pay to mow is
Northside.
Northside High School football field,
Okay.
the stadium field.
but you could actually have a coach who wants to do that and
Could.
wants to make a little
Yeah.
extra money.
That's a good point. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we could, I just think it's something we should continue to look at.
It's another way they could supplement the teaching
Supplement,
income.
Yeah, some income.
And Bermuda's a safer, I mean, because you said it basically heals and doesn't.
A lot of
create
people
the
feel like
holes.
it's a safer, better playing surface. There's studies, every group's going to say their study's better than the other, but We've had, I think the folks at Northside would tell you that that's a pretty good surface to play on soccer.
Yeah, that was the question I was gonna have, that, you know, can you maintain a field, cool grass, to be as safe as a Bermuda field?
That's a great question.
I think you can, yes, sir.
I think you have to limit usage a bit
Well,
more,
you're not gonna
right?
limit it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but that'd be where,
You're not
to answer
gonna-
your question, you'd have to do that in order to,
Well, you're overseeding and everything to fill the holes if you're playing on a muddy field like we were talking about. It's gonna
Right.
take time for that grass to grow. You're not gonna be able to play on it. So
Right.
once a hole's there, literally a hole's there unless you're gonna put sod or something.
well,
Until
you
you go
put
back and fix
sand
it.
in, that's what you guys did.
You can put sand, and then you have to go back and put seed in. So a lot of times, even after a football game, when you have a cool grass field, you know, you'd go out there that Friday night, right? You know, when everybody's picking up the pylons and the wraps, and you'd have a handful of seed, you know, putting it down in an attempt to try and get it to pop up and grow. I mean, so that's not uncommon. It's just, you know, again, when you get a divot or a rivet in a field like that, and it's cool grass, it just does not respond. So, you know, similar to like a crepe myrtle, right? You know, Bermuda is one that loves being attacked when it's, you know, shredded, and, you know, even the way that they get it to grow. I mean, when they go in and splice it and really to get it to take off, and it's pretty impressive to see it respond. So that's just the difference.
So in your opinion, a Bermuda field would be nicer than a cool grass field?
Yes, it'd be a nice addition, absolutely, to have. It's just, you know, again, contingent on, you know, we have a maintenance plan, and to also tell you this, all of you all play on it, you know, so if I scrimmage, you know, Glenburn in soccer, and then there's an expectation that we play county schools with one another. So of course, we Bird students are over there, Cave Spring students are in our district. You know, obviously, we're on it, you know, Northside, we play Northside. So all of you all are on our field, and so I know ultimately we want to have the safest surface as possible for our students.
And to that point, that's the reason we put Bermuda, again, we only have the one playing and the one practice, but Bermuda's, because, our practice field is as busy as our playing field, because all two schools are, so the Bermuda does, it's crazy how that
And so from
bounces.
mid-February, you know, we'll practice on it pretty much every day with our boys and girls soccer teams, JV and varsity, and they will go through, you know, that first week in June if we're fortunate enough to advance to the state play. So again, you can see that's just, it's constantly bombarded, you know, with usage when you put the games on top of that.
And it does need to be safe. It needs, I absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
I
not-
think so.
It's not just safe for Hidden Valley High School, it's safe for all the schools. And so I don't play soccer, but I would imagine if one surface, does a ball roll differently on cool grass versus Bermuda versus turf?
So Bermuda is typically, you know, obviously a much smoother surface. So when you see it on turf, the game plays so much faster because there's no indentations in the surface. So, I mean, you'll kick a ball, and they'll actually tell you, the soccer coach can attest to this, the game is played much different, you know, in ways. I mean, they actually adapt their strategies to playing on turf versus cool grass. On a Bermuda field, much softer, you know, it's just flat, but when you get onto a field that can be bumpy, I mean, again, you'll see a ball go across the field and it'll, you know, the trajectory
Waver.
of the ball just changes. So again, I think the Bermuda would be, you know, a preferable option, since it seems that, again, the turf is not an option, but Bermuda would definitely be a way to go, assuming we could take care of it and get it maintained.
Would, does Bermuda, to understand the whole concept of turning brown and, you know, it's not green, but it's the same surface throughout that whole period of time, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't change in whatsoever just because of the color.
but you do have to do all the maintenance pieces, 'cause otherwise, you know, you're gonna get the stuff kind of starting to come up in the springs, you gotta spray it, kill that.
You almost got away
And
from
in
us.
my opinion, I don't think, you know, from a public standpoint, it's like, you know, it's probably late in the school year last fall, it's been a Northside game, I was commenting, I mean, because I guess later in the season, it turns brown again, you know, so just from an aesthetic standpoint, and then it's not gonna help much in the fall, but from the spring, I mean, to me, you almost have to plant that ryegrass in the spring, so you do have some green in the spring, 'cause otherwise, I mean, plant it in the fall, so you have the, you know, the green in the springs, otherwise, I don't think people are satisfied with how it looks.
Correct, absolutely. And as you attested today, you know, Mr. Linden, you can come over and see it, and especially when you're, you know, up high and you look down on the field, you're like, man, this thing looks great, you know, comparative to several other fields, because we do have that, you know, that bright green, and it's not out until you actually walk on it and see some of the bare spots where it gets some of the heavier usage that you're like, I can see where the concerns are. But it does look a lot nicer, you know, through your season to have a cool grass field. Aesthetically, as Dr. Nicely alluded, it's just, you know, a much prettier field. But, you know, we're not really, I guess, in the business of pretty, you know, we want to make sure it's the
Functional.
safest.
Right.
Baseball, we're not having these issues on baseball and softball as much, I wouldn't think.
No,
Because it's not
absolutely
getting
not.
tracked as hard.
Correct. You know, there's not as much stop and start on it. You know,
Right.
baseball, softball, they're out there in that position. Sometimes they, you know, end up standing a lot, right? But in soccer, there's so much cutting and stopping and starting.
So essentially, you have Bermuda on your practice field. We have Bermuda at Northside Middle School. So essentially, your school, Hidden
The
Valley,
only one with cool grass in Roanoke County Public School System.
and then the middle school field up at Glenver would be a cool grass field. So essentially, 2 fields would all we'd be talking about total if we were to go completely to Bermuda.
So you have an
Middle
extra
school
field
on the
at
north side is cool grass.
Glenver also?
Right there in front, right there next to the
No, one
gym.
where the soccer team.
On the top, okay.
I think all of our middle school fields cool grass, I don't know. I
In
haven't
Valley
had
Middle
any
School, cool
complaints.
grass.
We don't have one, so I know,
You don't have
I know what
soccer, too.
ours is.
So, can somebody answer that?
Hidden Valley Middle School definitely has cool grass,
That's
right,
cool
where they
grass.
play. And the group will come out here in a minute and talk more about that. But
I'd just like to know how many
Northside
fields
Middle
we actually
School-
need
Yeah,
to
Cool
do.
grass.
some of
Cool
it,
grass, okay.
but they do have some Bermuda field. Don't they have some Bermuda practice fields?
Not up top, not where the middle school.
It's over by
soccer
the
team
gym.
is.
Oh,
Up
by the
above-
gym.
Up above.
Okay.
They
So-
share it with the baseball.
So it'd be 3 fields total.
Brent, so Glenver has 2 fields? They have one at middle school and the high school?
Full-size field. If you go right behind the football stadium and you're looking up, there's one right there, right where the bus lot's
It's
at.
between the bus lot and the
So
stadium.
in the efforts of being equitable, we don't have enough, I mean, we just, other than taking Stonebridge, I mean, I've heard this complaint where we have the lacrosse. Is it something we could look at? Do we have enough room to maybe just put in a third or half a field in the drainage area to give us a middle school, give our middle school a field? When it rains, it's just.
Sitting here without looking at a map,
I know,
or
but I can't
it'd be hard for me to say
I
yes or
can't
no.
remember.
Well, I
I mean,
think-
it's something we can look into.
But I think part of the solution is coming up with a better consistent plan to help them, or not help them, but actually take care of that whole maintenance, that whole, because there's 2 Bermuda fields, right? Is that true?
I think it's 1.5.
But they just need some help with their maintenance because they can't do it, and I think that's part of
But
the
we like,
issue.
you know, again, inequitable. I don't want to talk down that we don't need, because we don't have these facilities at both schools.
Do you-
We have 2 schools using 1 facility.
So you don't travel to like a park anywhere, like you don't have a park?
Oh, yeah, we have, so our baseball teams,
So that's where your transportation,
We
we
have-
talked about earlier, where that issue is that we're dealing with.
and then if there's a thunderstorm, a lightning storm, or an idiot with a gun,
That's
or
it.
whatever,
Right.
I'm sorry, did I not say that right? If there's another person with a unsecured weapon, you know, they're off in another facility with no protection whatsoever from the, weather or anything. That's why it would be wonderful, but this is a pie in the sky thing, to think we get Stonebridge Park area, that we could put some facilities that would attach to Williamburg, but that's gonna be a lot of money. So all I was saying was to give us another field, you know, even for gym purposes. See, our gym, our band, everything's on those 2 fields.
Do you have any idea how much it would even cost to make a practice field? I mean, obviously, we have the land for it. I mean, is there just a random guess as to what something like that would even entail?
No, sir.
Have to develop it. But anyway, I just want to bring it up. We can talk about that later. Let's get the
Yeah, let's,
fields secured.
any other questions on this presentation? What I think we should do maybe is review the information we got from Doug Blunt a couple of years ago on maintaining all our fields from somebody else, and then also, if everybody could get a chance to take a look at what Angela sent out a couple of weeks ago on what each school has currently. Because I know a lot of schools would love to have their own little soccer complex, and right now we have 2 that have their own soccer field, Cave Spring and Hidden Valley. Everybody else plays shares a field with football team or somebody else, so.
And the boosters paid for that.
Yeah, and, right, it's been, I mean, Boosters paid for a lot of that, and
We
There's
maintain
different
it.
maintenance
So
all
those
over the
maintenance
place.
costs are
Yeah.
double and triple in other areas than some of the schools. That would be the only thing.
And I
I'd say.
think what Ms. Fasciani brought up about stipends, I think we ought to look at something along that line too, because if we don't, you know, that could be a big cost.
Good idea.
The advantage,
So what is the comparison?
rather than a stipend and somebody that may or may not know what they're doing as far as maintaining that field, the advantage to having Parks and Rec do it is you have agronomist, was that the word you used earlier?
Well, that's what they do all day, every day,
That's-
right?
That's the word of the
That's
day.
too big for you. Go back to
I
horticulture.
guarantee
Let's-
the price has probably gone up in the last 2 years.
Yeah, but that's for all
for me.
10 of our, or all 5 high schools.
And I'd want to go
and 5
back
middle schools.
and know, remind what that scope was they proposed and all that.
But if we actually did a stipend, what is the comparison? You know, what would
What would it
be
be?
if we did it?
It'll be inconsistent, that's what it'll be.
I think it'd be, yeah.
It would be
Well, then we have
extremely
to think about-
inconsistent, because John Hartness is gonna keep his fields
He's not
immaculate,
he's not
and
wanting
somebody else
anybody to
over
touch it.
here is not gonna be as consistent. So unless we have, I think, Parks and Rec,
I'm the one that's supposed to
Then
be
you have to get-
negative, not you.
Well, then you have to get the real mowers, and then you've got parts and labor and gas. I'm just assuming, I mean, those are all costs that
Right.
you have to play into the bigger picture.
So,
I would like to see this continue as a conversation.
Yep.
Definitely the commute apart.
I agree.
see where the budget comes in, and when we finally get some numbers, and it's a great first step, I think, that we're taking the fields away from coaches, starting with next year's budget, but
My,
see what we can do.
then my thought would be, and we can talk offline, but, so we've said, like, in the operating budget that's been adopted, and of course, to your point, we're going to have to come back and do a final version of that once we get real numbers from General Assembly. We've already started the process of getting some quotes and prices on that, but we might not want to lock that in until we finish having this discussion. And maybe, I mean, because it might, if we were to roll all of that into a bigger package, then that we want to take that into consideration. Because we probably want to piecemeal stuff out if we can help it. So just say that out loud.
I do.
Okay.
Right, and John Michael, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Able to add some information that I wasn't able to add.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now circle back to item number 2.01. Request to name the field at Hidden Valley Middle School for retired teacher and coach, late Mr. Ralph Russo. We are ready for that, right?
We are. They are waiting patiently in the hallway. You guys can come in, Mr. Benson. Mr. Hughes. You have your whole crew.
There you go.
So you guys have a seat here. Well, thank you guys for coming. So let me start by giving some background information in terms of this process, and then we'll let these guys take it away. So you'll recall that about 4 or 5 years ago now, the school board formed a committee to review the procedures for naming facilities and schools, because what had happened was there were some policies that had changed, some language regarding naming parts of facilities, and we get back to the inconsistency piece. So a committee was formed. Mr. Ray, I forget who else, you may have been on the committee, but I know a school board member or two were on it. And so the new process was adopted by the school board. And basically what the new policy was, that schools moving forward, the current policy says that schools cannot be named for individuals moving forward. But parts of schools, that is facilities, can. And so Mr. Benson, a committee from Hidden Valley Middle School, has followed that process. Part of that procedure says, once it comes over here to the district level, we vet to make sure they actually have followed the process appropriately. And so we've done that. These guys have done that appropriately. So I'd love for them to, present what they've done and tell us about Mr. Russo. And of course, their proposal is to, name the football field, the soccer field there at Hidden Valley Middle School after Ralph Russo, who was a retired coach as well as a math teacher there at Hidden Valley Middle School for many, many years. So with that, take it away.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Nicely, thanks for having us here today. We are here to discuss the possibility of renaming our football/soccer field Ralph Russo Field in honor of Ralph Russo, who did pass away in April of 2020. At the end of last school year, almost exactly a year from now, a year ago, Mr. Hughes, who's behind me, who's a science teacher in the building, and Mr. Scalera came to me at our end-of-year cookout and just talked about, ways that we could honor Mr. Russo. And one idea that they had was possibly renaming the soccer field after him because he was such an attribute to the school in terms of coaching soccer. We have two of his former girls soccer players with us today. We have Ruby Kasmer to my right and Courtney Menard behind me here. This is Coach Darian Menard, who was a coach with Mr. Russo while I was an assistant principal at the school. But essentially, the staff came together and made a proposal to me in the form of the letter that you all see before you today. Essentially, they said that it was the honor to propose the name of Mr. Ralph Russo for our athletic field. They talked about how he's a beloved member of the faculty and coaching staff. He was the boys and girls soccer coach for many years, and he would coach either team in any capacity that was needed for the athletes. When he wasn't coaching, he would run the clock at school basketball games, and he was always at the Thanksgiving faculty-student basketball games. He was a math teacher at Hidden Valley Middle, but he would also conduct weekly peer tutoring sessions with student volunteers to help out. Most of the time, he would use his own money to buy pizza for all participants. I can't think of a single time that Mr. Russo stayed after school, on his own accord, not getting paid or anything like that, just to help out kids who needed extra help. And, he would order Domino's for the kids out of his own pocket just because that's the kind of guy he was. Even after he retired, he was at school almost every day. There was rarely a morning where I was in my office that I didn't see him sitting at one of the front desks, reading a newspaper or just talking to people, answering phones. Even if he wasn't subbing that day, he was there all the time.
I thought he was still on staff for a long
He
time.
did. He really was. And one of the most memorable things is he had a nickname for every single person in that building. Every student he met, every faculty member, every staff member. He was just such a great guy, such a memorable guy. And they said, and I agree, that we can't think of a person who's more deserving of this honor. He was committed to the faculty. He was committed to the students. He was just truly an all-around great guy. When my son was born, he even gave him his first set of golf clubs. Mr. Russo actually used to golf with my grandfather at Brookside some. So when Will was born, he got him a set of classic golf clubs, and we still have that and play with that to this day. So the faculty did present this letter to me that a number of faculty members signed. So that was step one in that process. Step two in the process was getting the permission from a close family member. So Mr. Hughes reached out to Mrs. Russo to get permission from her to proceed with possibly renaming our field. So we've attached the letter behind page 1 that you can see from Mrs. Russo. And then ultimately, the committee, which was the members that you see before you today, along with a couple of other committee members who cannot be here today, we met on March 3rd to discuss the merit of this application. And ultimately, we unanimously agreed that we wanted to submit to Dr. Nicely the proposal that we rename our soccer/football field Ralph Russo Field. So that's what brought us here today, and I'm going to step back for a moment and let anyone from the committee who would like to add to this have a moment to add before I close out.
Thank you all again for having us here today. A lot of this Chris has already, outlined, but I just wanted to read a letter of, my memories and relationship with Ralph. First of all, I don't know how many championship trophies you have to win to get your name on a field, but I do know what Ralph Russo meant to Hidden Valley. Ralph's love for his students and his student athletes of Hidden Valley Middle School could be seen from miles away. If you asked 4 former students who their favorite teacher was, I'd be willing to bet 3 of them would name Ralph. Ask 4 current or former teachers who their go-to substitute was, and I'd be willing to bet 3 of them would name Ralph. Even if you were just giving a test, Ralph would want to know what you were teaching in advance so he could study ahead of time, because he always wanted to give your students his best. Ask one of Ralph's athletes who he got his nickname from, and again, probably came from Ralph. Like Chris said, most teachers had a Russo nickname too. It was always some private joke that Russo shared with you and you alone, and it could brighten your day in an instant. Students and athletes loved to be around the man. His personality broke through the exterior of even the most hardened and difficult students. And he made it a point to get to know each one of his students and each one of his athletes very well. You would, like you said, you'd frequently see students or teammates huddled around Ralph, often sharing a pizza that he purchased for him with his own money. Russo's selfless nature with his money and his time was something only true love would explain. Ralph didn't care about the cost or the difficulty of the task. He cared about the kids. There was no denying Ralph's obvious love for his wife or his pride when he was boasting about his children or his dog, Ruby, that was his prize dog. Ralph's second love was Hidden Valley. It's where he wanted to be. It's where he left part of his heart. And it seems only fitting that he should remain there. Future generations of students and athletes could someday, look at the name above the field and wonder who Ralph Russo was. And without a doubt, everybody there would have a story to tell. So thank you for your consideration.
Nice tribute. Very nice.
I'm glad he did that mostly for us. But caring and character was what Mr. Russo was all about. And it's like Mr. Benson said, he'd sit up there in the front office and just kind of wait, put me in, coach, who's absent today, And, he made us all proud, and we really lost a friend when he passed away. And we would like to honor him in this way. Thank you.
Mr. Hughes, by the way, Mr. Riley, I don't know if you saw his lanyard with the periodic table. You'd be appreciative of that. Mr. Hughes will honor at our retirement dinner this year, because I understand we didn't check your driver's license to make sure you're old enough, but I understand you're retiring. I am dying to know this nickname thing, what Ralph's nickname for me was, or you, Mr. Benson. So Mr. Hughes must know. You tell me afterwards, though. Don't say it out loud. Which one?
They were always nice. They were not mean.
There was not a mean bone in Mr. Russo's body, so. Anything else, Mr. Benson?
I was just gonna say, when I was at Hidden Valley Middle School, he was my assistant coach at the time, and he played a huge role in my soccer career in middle school. And whether that was like building my confidence or just always being there, just the soccer team could really depend on him. And about once a month, he would order pizza at the school, and we could have lunch with him, and that was just like a really special time for all of us to just be able to go sit with him and be able to talk to him, and he was always just there to encourage us. And so I don't think there's someone who could be a better fit for the name of our field.
Can I just say something? Sure. So, I hope I'm not going to tear up. All right, Mr. Russo, I know he's very missed, and he died over COVID, and a lot of people didn't know about it. And people came back, and they were asking, where's Ralph? Because his presence was so great. He was always there. Always there. He and I had conversations every single time I saw him. He was a special guy. All my kids knew him well. And I'm just so thankful that you guys were able to collect where, I don't know where you were, I can't remember, over a football game or a picnic or something, and had this collective idea to put this forward. And in my opinion, there's nobody more deserving than Mr. Russo to have us honor, and it's a great way to hold him in our memory. And I applaud you for taking those steps. Those aren't easy, and you followed all the steps, and I thank you. So it was a special meeting.
Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Benson, anything else?
No, I'd just like to thank you all so much for considering this. Like we've said, we really think he is deserving. We can't think of a better person. We'd love to propose that the school field be renamed Ralph Russo Field.
You mentioned the committee was unanimous. Did you, along the way, were there any objections that you heard? Any objections from anybody?
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Nicely, this has followed all the procedures and the policy that we have in place?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So we appreciate their diligence and making sure they dot their i's and cross their t's on that front. And of course, you know, having personally worked with Mr. Russo, I can attest to what they're saying about him as well, so.
What a wonderful tribute, guys. That was awesome.
Does anybody have any other questions? So we make this.
that was-
What I would suggest is, because I think you'd want to, you know, do this in a public way. I mean, one way to do it would be maybe put it on an action item. So you actually would vote on it and then have, you know, the family come, and certainly, and the folks from Hidden Valley. That might be a great way to do that, if you want to do it that way.
Yes, absolutely. Would very much welcome that.
Thank you so
and I
much for
think,
following the guidelines. That's refreshing too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is May 12th too soon? May 26th?
We can work that out with Mr. Benson if that's okay.
We'll work that out? Okay,
At one of the May meetings, so we'll get together.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
fantastic.
And then-
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Do we have a naming ceremony too?
Yeah, they would organize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2.04, William Byrd High School Summer Infield Reclamation Project. Mr. Lowe,
I'm back.
welcome.
Back.
Thank
like
you.
a bad penny.
So with the work that's been done at William Byrd Baseball Field this past fall, winter, and this, obviously this spring as well, one of the things that we've realized is there's some additional work that needs to be done on that field. And what we've done is we've talked to Mr. Taylor, and obviously he's the AD and the baseball coach out there, so he's very familiar with the site. But we've also had a couple of vendors come out and give us their opinions on what they thought needed to be done with that site, just eyeballing it. And so it seems to be there's a consensus that what we need to do is from about 7 feet past the infield dirt into the outfield, all the way back to home plate. We need to basically strip that entire infield of all the grass and dirt and re-laser grade that entire infield to get out any low spots and undulations that are in that field. It's holding water at the home plate and pitcher's mound area, so it's not draining off the field because of the grade. So this would alleviate that issue. It has a very poor grass infield. What is called the army worm got into that infield last year and destroyed about a third of the grass in that infield, and it just hasn't grown back the way you'd want it to. It's a mismatch of grass in that infield now, and clumps, and it becomes an unsafe condition when you're talking about bouncing baseballs to your infielders and things like that, and a little bit inconsistent play as well. So what we've done is we've asked for a scope of work to include stripping the grass from 7 feet beyond the infield and skin 95 feet of that all the way back to home plate. Spoils would be hauled off the site. They would till the existing soil and reverse tine it to loose the soil up in those hard areas. Laser grade the soil for a uniform smooth surface. We would spread starter fertilizer in lime where sod was to be installed. And we'd provide and install a bluegrass fescue. That was the request of Mr. Taylor, not Bermuda sod. We would also reshape the pitching mound and home plate area, till and grade the infield skin to match the sod elevations, and would also clean up any disturbance caused by the construction. We'd also be resetting the bases to make sure they're all at equal elevation as they should be, with consistency to the pitcher's mound and home plate. So we have $10,000 left in that project budget of work that did not get completed yet out there due to the scheduling and practices and games. So there's still $10,000 remaining in that account, and right now we're looking at a not to exceed of $53,650 to do this reclamation project. We're still waiting on one more vendor price to come in.
Chris, did we pay that one vendor that came out there and delivered the trash?
We paid him for what he did.
Even that part of it?
Yes, sir.
That's unbelievable.
One of the things, just
We're
to
still getting
clarify,
glass
this
in the house.
$10,000 that he's talking about being left over, so originally what was approved was to fix a lip in
The lip from the infield to the outfield.
because of some drainage issues. So because of some issues that we were having, we stopped that work, and plus, really Mr. Taylor felt like that was gonna be like a kind of a Band-Aid fix to that. We really need to go back and just kind of do all of this work to do it the right way. So that's why there's $10,000 left in what was originally approved, that we can now apply to this, what you're asking for, is that right?
That's correct. We stopped them, we didn't want to disrupt the season any more than it was already being disrupted.
Are we using the current contractor that has been falling behind here lately?
Since we're in the current procurement process, I can tell you that I can't tell you whether he
Right.
is a low bid or not.
Right. Well, I would just like to hope that if we do approve it, that it gets done in the next year, you know, because I feel like and I'll leave them unnamed, but obviously all of our fields that to my knowledge, that we've been using this individual, I almost feel like we need to do something more than just have this one game in town work on these fields. If he's going to consistently be behind and not promise, or to promise and not fulfill, then we need to not do business with them anymore.
Understood.
So we've got, with the bids he's gotten in include some companies from out of state, so it's not just that, but on the other hand.
Well, and I know in the process of RFPs, there are references. And just work with purchasing to make sure that these folks have some good references, because obviously the one individual that we've been dealing with, I'm not a fan of, because all of our fields we're through the season pretty much, and all of our fields haven't been touched.
And to Mr. Hudson's point, are we using those folks on any other? I just don't see how we let what happened be
What we've done is.
be used again.
Right.
What we've done is worked with individual schools that still needed to do some of that, so Hidden Valley High School being one of those, and worked with the coach, talked to them directly, talked to Mr. Deeds, who's not here anymore, but was sitting right there, the AD, to see what do they want to do, knowing what the timeline was and so forth. And so there have been cases where we've continued to use them, and they've completed that and done an excellent job. They've been very pleased with it, so. But one of the things, just to remind.
And that's
that
rewarding.
Mr. Lowe is
I don't
moving
get it.
forward
I don't
is,
get it.
is putting in deadlines for making sure that, where there's some cost involved when things aren't done in a timely way.
Right,
That's
and
to help moving forward.
And I know if we continually have problems with certain people, then the county will stop doing business with those
Yeah.
people. You know, we're not going to keep doing business with someone who's not fulfilling,
Right.
the contract. So I know
Apparently we
purchasing
will.
has a way to do that within the laws. So if this person continues to operate in this fashion, I think that we need to
There
look in a
definitely
different
needs to be
direction.
accountability.
You don't have
Right.
to take that lowest bid if they're not, getting the work done like they have. And if they got a history, they don't have to put them on the list.
Right.
Or they say, we're not going to use that
We'll just no longer do
contractor."
business.
So the North Carolina company, where are we with that? What decisions were made?
So what the price he's bringing today is based on, we still need to get a final price from another quote.
Okay.
So that's why he's not saying, naming companies.
Oh, right.
But the budget that he's asking for today, it will meet the scope of what we know is a price we can do it for. Is
Okay, I see
is that
what you're
accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I know that's a little bit ambiguous, but because we're
Yeah.
still trying to get another quote in from somebody, we can't just name the company.
Okay.
How did this get that bad, though?
Well,
The field at Bird High School?
Yeah. I mean, the worm got in the
definitely.
grass or whatever, I understand that, but it seems,
so there's kind of a culmination. May I?
Oh, sure.
So this is the first time it's really been done or touched since 84 or 5 when it was put in. But there's a culmination. So one is the armyworm. It also got in my daughter's yard, and we had to, it eats the whole grass, her whole yard was gone within a matter of a day before we could treat it. And so it was in that area, the Spring Grove area back through, and we got it before it got to the next yard, but most of hers was gone. Then we had this contractor who brought out trash and dirt and dumped it in the infield and mixed it around, was gonna use it. So now we're getting glass, rock, and everything else out of the, it's every time they rake. And they said this will happen continually for, I don't know how long, a couple months or whatever, until they've raked this. So that contractor, and he knew it, and he left and wouldn't answer his phone, and
Well, and there has to be ways we can go, purchasing, we could go back after them
Yeah.
for that.
Do we have to pay for that? I mean, that just
Well, I
doesn't sound
think
like
we
you're
did
fulfilling
pay,
your
we
contract.
did pay for that, is what I've been told. So anyway, there's a culmination, but anyway, we were gonna, I don't know, do something on the sides and all that changed. I do appreciate that we're gonna actually do it right and hopefully do it one time and be done with it. it is what it is now, but again, keep in mind, it's our one field, so we try to put 3 teams on that.
Sure.
Varsity, JV, and middle school. So we try to get all of those on that field.
But, you know, I'm just thinking when we talked about the lip, you know, that was what was
That's over
presented.
time.
And we
That
said,
part's
wait a
over
minute,
time.
what, you know, and then the laser, the field, of course, but, you know. But I just,
I think these things do happen over time, long.
but I mean, it was worse than a lip.
Yeah, it was like a foot. It's,
Yeah.
so when the
sure.
ball comes out of the
Yeah.
infield, kind of launches.
That's safe.
Yeah, that
Playing
doesn't
a
make
kid
sense.
running back to get it, you know, and then he hits that. But Jason's done a fairly good job of trying to blend it a little bit, you know, so that he brings it down, out, you know, brings it up on the outfield, tries to blend it together. But it's.
When we do want to make sure that it's
This-
done completely, it's done right, it's fixed, we're not just
Be
Band-Aiding
done
it,
with
so.
it. Yep, thank
I
you.
know we talked to him, Mr. Lowe, even, I didn't even think about asking this, but you asked him, well, how's your irrigation system? That was very proactive, and he said, well, there were some issues, you're going to have somebody go out and check that out too. So we're just trying to make sure we have all the information we need to make the best decision we can versus, Band-Aiding it.
So the irrigation
Have
issues
problems
wouldn't be
later.
included in that 53,000?
That's not included.
No, sir.
That's probably some minor fixes.
It's minor
also.
fee. We're looking
Yeah,
at
that's
just
not a
replacing some
I think it
heads
was
out
only
there,
a
I believe,
couple
is what we're
heads
looking
or
at.
so.
Yeah.
He has a good water source there, and just, he needs to replace about 4 or 5 heads, I believe.
So this is, this is the worst of all the fields that we have, the baseball fields.
Probably
I
north
don't know
side's
about
worst
that.
overall. Now, they've redone their infield. They've already,
Oh, yeah.
Cave
they-
Spring had always been, out of the 5 high schools, without question, the best baseball field.
no, okay. I don't-
Who?
I mean,
Cave Spring.
or not Cave Spring, not Cave, Williamburg.
Williamburg.
Oh, had been,
Well,
yes,
had been.
yes,
For many years.
yeah.
Well, it goes back to what you talked
Yeah.
about before, when and it's no fault of anybody, it's just that there was a different era in terms of what, volunteers and coaches and parents did. And, I think that's probably a lot of it, but.
It just shows you what neglect, and if you can stay ahead of it, we're not
Sure.
gonna have these issues.
Well, I think you do it
I think
right,
part of
then
the
you don't have to
blame-
go back.
Yeah, I
then
think part of the
properly
blame
maintained.
belongs with VHSL, because it used to be a coach would coach for 13 weeks and then have 39 weeks off. And now a coach
Crazy.
is expected to coach 47 weeks.
Absolutely.
And still maintain the field. So it was one thing when they weren't having to coach year-round like they are now.
You want to see me get voted out? Let's go back to 13 or 15 weeks for each sport.
Before we spend this kind of money, do we want to look at a little bit more money and putting turf on that field and not having the annual expenses? But-
You mean any field, all the fields?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your previous presentation, the difference between that 10-year cost for maintaining a baseball and softball field compared to the cost of putting turf on it was not much. $70,000 difference over 10 years, $7,000 a year.
Yes, sir.
What if you did one a year?
If we start with north side, I'm fine.
I mean, I don't care, I'm just saying.
I agree
If you
with the
did
man.
one- If you did,
Yeah.
yeah. If
You
you
got
did
two
one a year,
already.
you,
This is why I think we need a plan.
Yeah.
We need a plan when you have all the ADs come together, everybody
Beef.
kind of put in.
Or we might,
Can we
Find that we
include this
could
in the
do
plan that we just discussed
2 or
in 2.0?
year.
I mean, we
a
don't know
couple
what
years,
type
yeah.
of money we're getting in June, and if we do get, it's time to take care of our fields, it's time to take care of our playgrounds, it's time to take care of our fields too. But you know what, we need also to do BCAT.
I was
It's
gonna
just,
say,
there's
it's
not.
really time to take care of BCAT.
Yes, I agree. I shouldn't have said that, but I forgot about BCAT there for a
don't
second.
get me started.
Yes. We need BCAT. Let's see how much money we get in June.
When would this work be done? I mean,
It would be
baseball
done-
season's over. Should be
Yes.
done in the fall, so it's ready for the spring.
Yes, we're looking at late July, August at the earliest. All the vendors are completely booked through the majority of the summer.
So
One
we've got a
vendor's,
little bit of time to
Well, but
explore
you,
this.
well, we need to get that spot if we
Right.
want to do it, or else they're going to get filled up
Mm-hmm.
even further. So this is kind of a timing issue now since we're in May.
And again, keep in mind, we don't have one at a junior high and a high school. We've got one, and that's for everything.
Where do the kids practice?
Can we annex Vinton now?
We have to go to rec fields, wherever they can find. It's interesting.
Northside has to go over to.
Well, you
Baldwin
got
Park.
you got a daggone Moyer complex in front of Northside though. We don't have, that would be nice.
Are you requesting that this be appropriated shortly? Would this be a consent agenda item on the next meeting? Is that what we're thinking?
Do I need to make a motion?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Requesting $43,650 from minor capital. So yes, sir, if you want to proceed with this project, we need to put it on the consent for the next meeting.
In order to get it done timely.
Yes, sir. I would hate for this to drag into September or October, then you're starting to deal with weather issues potentially.
Then it wouldn't be ready.
And
Possibly.
We were doing this last year.
and I'm not advocating either way, because you guys brought this up for discussion, but in the name of having all the information on the table, you know, who brought up about doing the turf?
That would be me.
Oh, Commissioner Lynn. So, we do know what that would cost. I don't know, I guess what we don't know is in terms of just timing, we don't know what they would say as far as how quickly they could do that if you decided to go that direction. In terms of, I mean, and we definitely want to get all the ADs together and principals together to discuss some of these issues. I feel confident in saying that there would be a desire. I mean, they would not want it. Is that a dull negative?
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel confident in saying they would not come back and say, oh, no, we'd rather have, you know, the natural grass. In fact, I think Mr. Taylor has actually, you know, kind of said that. So, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I think this is something you all have to decide, but I just want to make sure all the information's on the table. So,
But that's, yeah, to get that done though, it's
you
gonna take a
have
lot
to
longer.
start the process. Well, you have to start the process,
Yeah.
in my opinion, of doing that.
But that's not gonna
too.
solve all the fields problems, everything, right? The outfield, everything you've got, right?
Yeah, it would still be natural grass or Bermuda,
Yeah,
whatever we
so I mean,
decide.
it's still, we still have that problem of elevation.
Oh, we'd have to do this,
Yeah, I
whether we
mean,
do,
that's,
whatever we do.
yeah.
Because this isn't a either or.
That 250,000 includes a drainage system underneath the.
Yes, sir, that would level the field. Yes, sir, that would include all the
Yeah.
excavation.
No, I'm saying that would, no, I agree with you. I'm just
I thought you were
saying,
saying it was
if
gonna
you
be
don't do that, we gotta do
Mm-hmm.
one or the other. which-
Can you check into how long it may take if we were to do that, turf? on-
Yes,
on
sir,
those fields?
absolutely.
And to Mr. Greenway's question is, because I'm interested in knowing, as far as like, I mean, either way, you've got to do the laser grading, but is that a different process, do you know, Chris, in terms of doing it for sod versus artificial?
It would be, because on the artificial turf, they would come in and excavate about 18 inches of soil out of the ground and then fill it with stone, and then they would laser grade the stone and come back and put the turf on top of the stone.
Gotcha.
So it is a different process.
Okay. So, and the reason I ask that is, it's probably not a situation where we should proceed with the process for the natural grass if we're contemplating the other.
That's correct.
Right.
Any other schools have a turf infield? I feel like there is one. The boosters paid for it. No?
Not
No,
here,
ma'am,
not
not
in
here.
Roanoke County.
Not in Roanoke County.
No.
But
It
if
is
you wanna
becoming
see
more
an amazing
commonplace, though.
Facility that has that on all their facilities, go over to Heritage.
Oh, really?
Heritage, go to Lynchburg and look at Heritage High School.
Indoor track facility?
You name it, they've got it.
I think they got a nice donation from one of the athletes from, I forget which one, but he did a lot of the weight room and everything. One of the pro
Okay.
players.
So we'll hold off on that being an action or a consent agenda item for this week, for Wednesday, for
But how
Thursday.
quickly are we, so if we do hold off on this, and again, you know, you start getting into the,
Would the May 26th meeting be soon enough?
I can have the information by then, yes, sir.
But you're asking that, but are you asking that, but also what any delay would do in terms of doing the other? Or are you
Yeah.
asking that too?
Yes.
I guess we don't really know until you.
I would
well,
have to
but the
talk
bigger
to,
picture is, I guess Susan can obviously tell us what the surplus will be now, right? I mean,
I
because
don't
you do
turn
have to
around
fund
see that
it.
she's probably asleep down in her chair.
She woke up.
It's a little early for that.
No,
Are
I
we
get
in
it.
double
But my
digits?
point is
We
it's
do.
gotta be funded. So you have to think along those lines too. So does that matter? I think it kinda does.
Yeah, it
How
does.
much is in minor capital reserves?
After the playgrounds, 1.3 million, 1.37
Three.
million.
And is that?
That's after next year's allocation of the playground.
Oh, okay.
So if you didn't do next year's allocation of playgrounds, it's 2.871 million.
But we are doing,
Yeah.
we are doing
What's
the
the cost you
playgrounds.
put on the artificial?
That's it.
$250,000, $250,000.
So I haven't been on there.
So that wouldn't stop putting out for bid or anything if we wait till the second meeting. I mean, you want to be in time
All
for
right.
next year, right?
Mr. Greenway, you take the lead on this.
So, well, here's an idea. Could we secure that spot while we're continuing to develop this idea?
We could, to your point, I think, I mean, you could probably get an answer, or can we get an answer as far as like, because the main question is, if we did at least what I'm hearing, if we did artificial, what would be the timeline for being able to get that scheduled? That's the
Yes.
question, right, that's pending?
And I can have that probably within a week.
So
Okay.
my thought would be, if
Okay.
he can get that
Yeah.
within a week, depending upon
Probably
that
won't hurt
answer, we could or could not still circle back around at the next meeting and put it on, like, I mean, if we all agreed on what would be unacceptable, right? I mean, for example, if the answer was, well, that couldn't be done until, I mean, what would be unacceptable, I guess? Regardless, we need it fixed for next season, right?
That's the issue, is that it's gotta be, I mean, it's,
Right.
I don't know how they made it work this year, but it's gotta be fixed, but we could, if a week bought us time that we could make a decision if that's something the board wanted to do.
Why don't we do this, depending upon what he can find out for next week, we'll either put his proposal on for consent, or we'll put his new information in as an information item. And
That's
then
fine with me,
bring
but
it back.
wouldn't we have to, no, I guess consent we wouldn't have to, I was thinking we'd have to do it.
That's what we would agree to, that it's either or, I guess, today, wouldn't we? Say, you're going to put that on if you not able to.
Right, we can we'll put it on one
One
or
or
the
the
other
other.
for your consideration next week at the meeting,
Okay,
Okay,
if that works.
yeah.
Thank you.
thank you.
2.05, mobile classroom unit pricing update. Mr. Lowe.
So we've been requested to provide cost for replacing existing mobile classrooms within the county. Currently, mobile classrooms exist at Back Creek. There's 2, Glen Cove has 2, and Clearbrook has 1. We required the following information. We are looking at a low cost right now of $84,716 per mobile unit. And that is for one of the existing units that is sitting at William Byrd right now. So it is for a used unit from that company. We have also received other costs. One has been $103,000, another was $104,000, and I received another today for over $200,000 per trailer.
Is this is for storage?
No, this is for classrooms.
No,
This is for
classroom.
classroom, okay.
And are all these in about the same condition?
Yes, sir.
I mean, all the ones?
Yes, sir.
The two.
used too, as well? I mean, is it used, a good used?
Well, yeah, they're in good condition. They're the ones we used at Case Spring, and now they're sitting at William Byrd, same company. And so far, we haven't had any major issues at William Byrd. Occasional leak here or there outside the door, but for the most part, we've had really good, the HVAC systems work really well in them, and the teachers and kids are taking good care of them.
Is there a clear need for them? I'm not talking about replacement, I just mean in general for a mobile classroom. Do we need that?
I know,
At the schools where they currently are,
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm looking at
Being
the,
used.
I hate to go down the list, but I feel confident in the answer is yes. I mean, I know like where Clearbrook is, what they're using it for, Back Creek, Glen Cove.
So they're actually teaching in these classrooms each day?
Oh, yeah, music classes. That's one of the big issues. I know Clearbrook, just visiting with that teacher, a few months ago. And the ones he's talking about are so much larger. The current ones are just really small. So, I mean, she's just really cramped for space and storage and so forth. And
So we don't have the room in our current infrastructure for what
Right.
We were
right.
having it on the stage, a lot of it, so it was, and they were having some electrical issues as well, which they couldn't even turn on the heat or.
Mike and Brent, would this suffice for y'all? Because here's my thing is, this infrastructure, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer that we have to solve that issue if you don't have enough room in those classrooms. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
it's just a no-brainer. Now,
Well-
cost shouldn't even, I mean, I'm not saying this, I'm tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but cost shouldn't be an issue to get those kids in a classroom that makes sense. And
To have enough room and.
Yes.
And they're actually dividing and having two classes, not just one.
Is this the best solution too, though? Because $85,000 is a lot of money. Could we, and again, I have no knowledge, I'm just throwing this out there, could we make a modification to the schools to create some space, a classroom space?
Like build on?
Yeah, and I know.
I think
So-
Clearbrook and Back Creek probably be pretty challenging to do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
we're-
haven't,
We
So-
got
That's why I say
300
I'm
some
not-
kids.
Mike and I went after I was elected and we toured all our schools that we shared together, and that's when I saw this eyesore, this trailer, and I said, oh my goodness, what is going on here? And as soon as I talked to, Mike and I discussed this, and with the principal too, it was kind of funny how it got painted very quickly, and I just thought to myself, you can't put lipstick on a pig. I mean, structurally, it was still bad. I mean, they
Oh,
had,
yeah.
we went and looked
At
at
one
it.
time, they had a hole in the
There's
floor.
holes in it, underpinnings, I mean, animals getting
Animals
in,
are under there.
creatures.
Yeah.
I
Then we
mean, it
went
was really
back and
bad.
we had our principal take pictures, and the pictures were even worse than what I
Oh,
actually
it
saw,
was-
because she really showed
Mhm.
at greater depth what was going on, and it's terrible.
That
It's
is
just
awful.
terrible.
I mean.
Yeah.
For
that's-
our students to be, and it smells.
And
I'm
and-
sure there's mold in there, but it smells like there is.
Yeah, and we didn't even have a handicap ramp on the one at Back Creek, and they finally came out and did that, but it's really, you didn't treat it or anything, so it's pretty rough now again. But it's, but it was,
Well, I
So
say-
we
To Mr.
discussed, could you put on an extra classroom, to Brent's question, and the answer is absolutely no. Like, there's no
Yeah.
physical space to
At those
add
two
to that.
schools, yeah.
yeah, it would be a challenge.
I even think, Glen Cove has one. I think Cundiff could use one. I mean, of course, hopefully Glen Cove and Cundiff will be
Yeah.
replacing that, but
I haven't-
we
I
shouldn't
haven't
wait
heard that
for,
issue, but yeah.
that construction project, to take care of that. in my opinion.
We need bathrooms. We don't even have bathrooms in our, so, no, I mean, that's a bigger issue, but, man, we ought to solve this if we can.
And I want to thank Mike, because Mike went ahead and thought outside of the box. I would have never have thought to go to William Byrd and see what cottages were available to buy used. I mean, that was a great idea on your behalf, Mike, so thank
is
you
a
for
good
taking the
idea.
Oh,
charge on
yeah,
that.
you wouldn't get them cheaper.
Well,
They're nice.
I know at some schools, we kind of,
They're
will do
nice.
gym, and then, you'll see the gym teacher for a couple days, and then he's out for a few days, and then you'll see the music teacher for a few days, and then you'll see the art teacher for a few days. So some of these schools that I guess are bigger, we're not doing that. There's gym every day of the week. There's
It's
music.
it's an encore rotation, so, is there?
Because I know at some schools we,
Everybody has PE.
Yeah, everybody.
And what happens is at some of our larger schools, they may have, they're a four top, they may have an additional PE teacher that will come certain days. Or the art teacher will rotate.
right,
So
that's,
Are you saying PE is every day?
Most of the schools, we have full-time PE teachers that are there that are in.
But I mean, does the students have PE class every
Oh,
day?
no, no,
Right.
they sure don't. I'm
So it's
sorry.
part of that encore rotation.
right,
thing
so I
that's
see the
used in art.
rotation in some of our schools, and I know that, we don't have gym in certain elementary schools every day.
Yeah, PE, they have recess, but not necessarily the PE class.
Right.
Right.
So I know that the current music teacher in one of our schools, you'll see her in the gym on the days that the gym teacher's not there. So that's, I guess, what
Oh,
I'm,
to use that bigger space?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
so that's kind of what I'm looking at, is
You're-
that feasible in these other three schools? I don't know.
Like a multi-purpose, using it as a multi-purpose space. That wasn't my impression, because we tried to brainstorm, at least at Back Creek.
Yeah.
There, I asked her,
Right, like
we
use I know, like, on the Glimmer side of town, we'll use the gym for music, we'll use the gym for other things when
Right.
the gym's
That
not
makes
there,
sense.
kind of, you know.
It seemed to me.
Just want to make sure we
But
really
these were-
need it
I think
before we
you're right,
spend this
yeah.
kind of money.
I
Yeah,
think,
we do instruction too.
yeah, they have instruction in there. There's,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just, it's
not
a
just-
classroom
And their
setting.
instruments and so forth, they have their little
Instruments.
guitars and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's probably not something on a routine basis you want to try to store in the gym or something like that.
Right.
It's-
Or be able to
Just
use.
want to make sure, yeah, I mean, it's a
They
lot of
do all
money.
their
like you
music,
said.
I know at Back Creek in that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I hear you, Brent.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if
asked-
we legitimately need them, I'm not against it. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure before we
Yeah.
spend.
No, I asked those questions though, just like you did.
You know,
is
400
where
almost.
else can you put these kids? Is that feasible? And
Right.
the answer
Yeah.
was very quick.
It's $500,000.
And you think about, you think about you can move this many kids to another one, and then each one of them are busting, they're not able to take
Right.
any more.
And
You
the
know,
issue
you
is they're in a flood zone there, right? Is it, there's some flooding? And
At
so they
Back
have
Creek?
it,
Yeah, Back Creek,
Back Creek, yeah, so they had to do some engineering and.
yeah.
Anyway.
Are there any soft costs that are not included in that figure?
No, sir, that cost includes full setup and moving into the locations as well.
So 85, and that's at 5 of them.
We
85 would
consider,
be-
I mean, just, is that hooking up electric? That's walking in the door and starting to teach.
Yes, sir.
I think the electric is probably already hooked up, right?
Yeah, it already has a panel. They already have panels. All we have to do is hook
But when
the
they
electric.
set it up, they set up everything.
Yes, sir.
The underpin and everything.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
It's
that
all
price
included.
doesn't seem that unreasonable to me. And then we own the unit?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And we would surplus the existing old units and surplus those and get rid of them.
It's bad. I can send some pictures to Ken and Ken.
I would
do
advocate
some-
for doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
pretty
there,
bad.
it's not a matter of just cosmetics. I mean, truly, when I went to the Clearbrook one, I mean, it's honestly, I'm amazed that, I mean, you know, it's a space issue. You know, it's a need.
Could that be done starting next school year? Could it
Well,
be-
that's what I was going to ask. So the 85, that would be from using the one, that would be, we couldn't get those until the following school year.
The fall of '23, summer of '23.
So your higher prices, we could maybe get for this school year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So is that something you have to put out to bid?
He's
We
got
would.
bids on it.
You
We
have
would.
bids,
We,
okay.
that's what these are. These are,
That's an official bid?
these are official
Price
quotes.
quotes.
Yeah, official quotes.
Quotes.
So the question before us, well, first of all, to do it or not to do it, but if we do it, right now, if you wanted to try to, I mean, how certain are we as far as the higher price getting them by August?
I would need to double check that because I did not ask for a time date on when to
Okay.
do it.
So we'd want to know that. But we know for sure the 85, is that a price we could lock in for the following year?
I believe we
they
could.
could,
Yes, yes, sir. I believe
we
we
go ahead
could.
and purchase some and then?
Yes,
And they'd be available after.
after the
when
bird project.
Bird finished.
Or as they start to leave those cottages, classrooms.
So in terms of surplus, what would you get back? $20,000?
I don't know, I don't
They should
remember
be
what
trashed.
we surplused all the ones from the Glenver project, but I cannot remember what we got for them.
So 2 questions. Where does the funding, is it minor capital?
Yes, and you would have $947,996.
But if they're not available to the
She's on
following
it
year,
now.
they wouldn't come out of minor capital. Or
Can we do that, Susan?
You would have to set aside the fund in order to set the PO in order to.
Purchase.
But can we purchase now even though they wouldn't be delivered until a year from now?
As long as the funds are encumbered, right?
You would want to encumber the funds, you don't want to spend
Okay, but
them. We would have to pull them out of minor capital to encumber it.
Yeah, you wouldn't pay for
we
it.
just need to make sure we lock in the price with the vendor.
Because these same
wouldn't-
trailers were $60,000 after the Cave Spring project.
Right. So,
Yeah, they
Well,
were.
So the first part was the funding, and the second part for me is non-negotiable. I think, I'll be honest with you, I mean, if it were my kids, I don't know if, I hope they're not sacrificing educational opportunities by not having the space, but this one's a hard one for me, not to say just going, whatever we gotta do, get it done for September 1, or not September 1, whatever it is. August 15th or whenever we start. I'll be honest, that's a tough one.
That may not be possible, right?
I don't know, I look back at the Cave Spring project and we issued that purchase order in late October and we started having the trailers delivered at the end of November. So in about 4 or 5 weeks, and they were brand new built to our specs.
In the mud.
They weren't quite done by then.
In the mud.
In the mud, and then it took a little while to get them set up, as if you remember, but
Pull them in
I
by
remember
tractor.
somebody on a Bobcat a
Yeah.
time or 10.
had a rake or shovel or two.
Well, and my only other question is gonna be, because you brought it up, I mean, I don't wanna do this and find out that we have another school that needs it. And
Yeah,
if-
'cause this-
And if Cundiff is one that needs it, I mean, that school,
And I mentioned Cundiff because knowing Glen Cove
Well,
has
absolutely,
one,
and
and they
ours is
actually have,
bigger.
more students. So I would want to reach out to Ms. McCallum just to make sure that while we're
Absolutely.
doing this, do we need to look at that?
because that school's a dump anyway.
Ms. Hogan says Ms. McCallum would
She
like
does
that.
want one, she's told me.
Well, then good,
Who's
then, I mean, if that's,
At Cundiff.
Yeah.
Can we get a cheaper price for buying one more? Just two for the BOGO?
Right.
Yeah.
We can keep working on it. We definitely will
Can you
keep working on
ask?
it.
so where do we go from here? Is it, and, I mean, does anybody else have an or you just wanna wait a year? I mean, where are we at with it?
Well, I'm concerned about the safety aspect, like you said. If
Telling you
they
it's
smell
bad.
like mold, I don't want our kids being in there for any amount of
I
time
agree.
breathing like that. So if it's a
100%.
concern that there's mold and a safety issue, I think we need to move
Yeah, if
on
my
something.
kids, if my kid's in
I
there, I'm
think
not
you'd
gonna
have
be
to have
happy.
safety issues on these.
There's critters in there.
I don't think they've ever actually had, because I followed up with the principals, I don't think they've actually been inside. They did have them like in the skirting underneath
Yeah.
before.
Well,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, but it's so much more.
that's for me, that's close enough.
I hear you.
Because it's holes under these skirts that
In
we
the
have.
skirting,
I mean, they're
right.
not even sealed. And I mean, you know, it's not even a possibility that you would. And that's the reason you got those things that are happening. And
Well,
they
here's
just,
the obvious question. Why aren't they sealed? Why wouldn't they be sealed?
because,
Either whether we do this or not.
yeah, over a period of time, they have just deteriorated and nobody went in there to fix it.
Well, we're bringing it up now,
Yeah.
right?
They-
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you still got the insides that have.
Oh, no,
gone
I'm
down.
saying
Yeah,
regardless,
but it
we
was-
need to fix this.
They never kept it up because they
They
just let
tried to
it.
repair it, you could see like where they kind of tacked some aluminum over it, but it's
But,
it's not fixable. To some extent, it's not fixable, in my opinion. I mean, just,
but they actually had animals get in.
yeah.
Can we get a report on the availability of, if we went with a different vendor, when they may be available? And then also, it might not hurt to actually put some eyes on these units to see if they're, I mean, have you been in the 5 that we would be replacing
I have. It would not hurt to replace those 5.
immediately?
Well,
As soon as we can.
yeah, as soon as we can. I mean, I don't think we're at a health hazard or health risk anywhere or a safety risk anywhere, but I think it's definitely time for them to be replaced.
Versus any type of maintenance to get them to a standard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
I don't know how
Space is
disposable they are or.
Well,
Yeah.
the one at Clearbrook, for instance, is probably, that came from the Glenver project. So if you remember the ones we had there, that's the reason we didn't save most of those, is because they were in that kind of condition.
What's the life expectancy of these,
That's good.
if maintained?
Yeah, that's not a question I think I can answer right now. I can find out.
I think the ones like we had at Cave Spring, and certainly now at Bird, they're nice. And I don't see those deteriorating, especially if you keep the skirts
Well,
around.
yeah, they're built to current building codes, whereas like the ones at Back Creek, for instance, were probably built 25, 30 years ago, if not longer.
So it would be essentially the same thing as what we're using at Bird?
Yes.
So how much longer are we looking at in the Bird project in terms of being able to shift a few of those over?
Next summer.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So if they would maintain for a year, we could save $424,000.
No. No,
No.
that $84,000 is purchasing the ones that are at Bird.
Okay.
Currently.
I
Yeah,
thought you
that's-
meant,
There's
okay, I
an
missed that
used
part.
version.
Oh, yeah, those aren't
You'd have to
already-
add-
You can save about $100,000.
Add about 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could have
Another
6 for the price of 5.
15,000.
Yeah, which is still a pretty
Missed that
good
part.
deal. If you said they're in good condition, it sounds like they are.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I hear that there might be an interest in go ahead and proceeding with the higher price if we can get them in for next school year? If we can't anyway, then obviously, I mean, if we're looking at the following school year anyway, then,
It's about
Say 15 per.
$60,000.
And add Cundiff to that if that's the
Right.
case.
right.
Is that all
Yes.
she needs?
Yes, she said if she could have one, that would be great.
Okay.
If it's possible to have them installed and ready to go by August 15th, then I think we look at that 103,000 each.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to the vendors tomorrow.
Okay.
I agree, thank you.
Yeah, please let us know on that as quick,
Yeah,
because,
keep us-
Yes,
so
sir.
we can act on it.
We'll do.
Keep us updated.
Well, I mean, if it's okay, we'd like to bring it back for next week,
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
fine,
one way or the other.
Yeah.
How's that?
that's fine.
Is there a leasing option on those things?
There is.
And what are we looking at leasing wise versus owning?
Just from experience from the Cave Spring project, it was about $1,600 a month, plus the initial setup fee of about $29,000 to $30,000.
Nah, that's not feasible then.
No, it
No,
isn't.
it's not worth it.
It does add up pretty quickly.
16,000, you'd have it. 10
Item
months.
2.06, oh, we've got about 20 minutes left here, 25
All right.
minutes.
Right.
2.06, project update, Mr. Lowe.
So I want to touch base on a couple projects. The first would be Northside Middle School water line. I want to keep everyone up to date what's going on. The vault has been installed now for a few weeks. Water line's installed and covered, and it's been paved over. Traffic's now allowed to drive over the installed pipe. The line pressure test was performed by Roanoke County and passed inspection. The water quality tests were performed, submitted, and approved this week. The deed of easement has been received from the attorney, and we submitted it to the Water Authority for their review. The deed of easement will need to be signed and then recorded at the courthouse once all requested changes by the Water Authority are completed. And I believe we have a conference call with them tomorrow scheduled to make sure that we're all on the same page. This Saturday, May 7th, under the guidance and observation of the Water Authority, our contractor will be at Northside Middle School to complete the changeover from the well to the domestic water supplied by the Water Authority. This will take about 4 to 6 hours, and the well at that point will be capped and sealed and no longer provide water for the facility. So we're looking to have the changeover on the water this weekend, and so Monday, when the kids come back to school, they should be on domestic water at that point, and we'll no longer be using the well at Northside Middle School. Tennis courts, light bases have been installed at Williamsburg High School. The trenches were covered, backfilled, and asphalt was placed back on top. Light poles are going to be installed tomorrow with the lights. The light bases have been installed at Northside High School. Light poles, the net post, and fencing were continuing being installed this week. Tennis court coatings are scheduled to be applied next, and so the tennis court coatings we're looking at, I think next week is the end of the regular tennis season for everyone, so he's looking to start the coatings the following week, probably starting at Northside since no one's using those courts, obviously. And as soon as he gets the net post in and the fencing up, he's going to be moving out there to do that coating. So we'll see some paint on the ground here, hopefully within the next 7 to 10 days at Northside. He'll follow up at Byrd and then move over to Glenver and Cave Spring as well.
If you want to see like a final product of what this looks like over to Stonebridge, over in the Benton area, Parks and Rec just had that same guy. Doug Blunt said I know we're frustrated with delays or whatever, but he is like the best guy in the state, and they're looking really nice. So I think at the end of the day, we're going to be real pleased with all these look.
We just hope there is an end of the day.
Right,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Light at the end of the tunnel, I think.
So William Byrd renovation, we're obviously, phase 1 is complete. They're working on area F right now. Avis is fine tuning the schedule for the summer work because it's going to be pretty extensive this summer. We're investigating changing to powered hand dryers over there in lieu of paper towels due to some plumbing issues that we've been having. Fire alarm system owner training will take place within the next 10 days. Demolition crew is coming back on May 9th to work in area F, and then we'll move to area C, which area C is the front of the school, lobby, media center, that area. Area F is the back towards the weight room and tech ed, that area.
They're already starting to move like the guidance suite out of there and.
We're working on getting that out next week.
That was something that SAC group said was, whoever decided to put guidance all the way down on the other end of the hall from the principal's
Admin.
office. Yeah, so I'm glad that's gonna get fixed.
It'll be nice when they get tied back together.
Huh? Well, yeah.
The Hidden Valley High School baseball and softball field were completed Monday. Glenver Middle School softball, infield material has been ordered. It's supposed to be delivered next week.
Wait a minute, I thought that was like 3 months ago.
Well, he
Is
was
he
moving
finally
there
gonna
after he
deliver it
finished
now?
Hidden Valley High School.
Okay.
Well, I hate to say it's the COVID excuse, but I've got the
If I were
COVID excuse
kind of a
today.
bet- I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would look to see it out there next week.
So he's to begin work out there at the middle school softball field next weekend.
Tell
not-
him thanks,
so-
the season's
But the
over.
infield
but-
mix is already there.
No, the infield mix hasn't been delivered yet.
Oh.
Apparently, they had COVID this week.
Oh, they had COVID.
Yeah. Man, we played our
Is
whole
that- is that
season
my
on.
buddy from baseball?
Yes.
Is it the same? Oh,
Yep,
jeez.
same.
So
Hopefully
Hidden Valley Middle
it's
School
really
field house and
dirt.
stairs.
Not glad.
We did receive the structural report, and the requirements and recommendations were received on April 18th. Our structural engineer determined that the field house is in good condition and the cracks are consistent with a building of that age. He did recommend that we pursue caulk and mortar repair, so we're scheduling that, taking care of that this summer. The stair and concrete walk system is pitted from de-icing salts, and there are tripping hazards along the sidewalk and concrete landings at all levels of the stair system. The tripping hazards are created by differential movement of the landings and section of sidewalk, which are ground supported. The lowest two sections of concrete stairs have irregular rise and run stair treads and slope, creating walking hazards. There are handrails at each stair section, and it is determined that the best solution is to demolish and re-pour the stair landings to create a safe level walking surface. The lower two sections of the concrete stairs should be demolished and reconstructed. We are currently consulting with multiple architects to procure their services to provide construction documents for this work and to be sure the stair system meets with all current codes and in respect to the length of stairs and landings. We also plan to have the architect study the current stair location and orientation to see if its better stair option exists out there. This is going to be a pretty significant project when we talk about repouring that amount of stairs.
What was this on?
Hidden Valley Middle School, the
Concrete
stairs, the
stairs.
concrete stairs leading from the school down to the field.
It's a long hill, so it's.
So you have
it's not
multiple
good for a long
landings,
time.
and the stairs are pulling away from the landings.
It's dangerous.
And they started to wash out underneath, so they're starting to tilt left or right, which is causing some irregular walking access.
Gotcha.
So
Will
there'll
will they address some of the handicap issues?
be, I've also asked the architects to create a plan showing a parking lot next to the bleachers, so that would help with the handicap accessibility issue into the bleachers.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of complaints about that.
Yeah, we think we can simplify that just by creating a small parking lot right there on that
Okay.
flat piece below the administrative parking.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Would
Uh,
that
so-
be down at the field?
No, it'd be up at the bleachers.
Bleacher level.
Bleacher
At the
level.
bleacher level?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
So when will you have more information? Do you have to put that out to an architect? How does that work?
Well, we're getting proposals now from the
You are?
architects.
Okay.
And then, so once we select one, it'll probably take about 4 to 6 weeks for them to develop a set of construction drawings. And then we would put those out to bid once they've been approved by the county planning department,
Okay.
engineering department. So this will be a process that will last most of the summer, probably. So, Hidden Valley Middle School cooling tower replacement, we have received bids on that, and I just want to kind of give you an update on where we're at with a lot of these HVAC projects. That is a project we budgeted based off experience for about $225,000, and that project came in at $450,000. And the lead time on the equipment is 32 weeks, so they wouldn't even have it installed until December. So this is pretty much across the board with HVAC equipment. We're finding out on our boiler projects, we're looking at a lot of 42-week lead times for boilers. So we're actually right now not only getting pricing for boilers, but we're also getting pricing for temporary boilers for this fall, because we know we're going to need some temporary boilers this fall in order to heat the schools until the regular boilers come in. So just kind of wanted to let you know where we're at on some of those projects. We did receive a bid for the Hidden Valley High School gym court resurfacing. So we're working with the vendor on that to do some value engineering possibly to make that a little bit more feasible for both us and the school. And I gave you the update on the boiler replacements. We're just receiving pricing right now, and we're looking at some temporary pricing as well. And we have multiple asphalt repair projects going on, Hidden Valley High School, Glenver Elementary and Middle School. So we're working on some projects we're actually having difficulty finding asphalt contractors right now who are willing to do the work, so.
While the price of asphalt's also going up with oil.
Yep.
So I was looking to get my driveway redone. I couldn't believe how much it was gonna cost. He said it's gonna double by the fall.
Cave Spring High School softball, you said AP.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright. Yes, so we went ahead and gave approval to AEP to start that work.
Put the light up.
Yes, sir.
Poles up.
They're creating a new service out there, so
Yeah.
we had to put a new power, a meter box on the building, and then then we have to run some conduit, and then they'll come out and make the pull for us. So we
Okay.
got that price from them this week, actually, and gave them permission to go ahead and proceed.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Got,
Any questions?
you know, Mr. Chairman, I know this, I don't want to open this can of worms, but I just want, what is the agreement we have with the city for Hidden Valley Middle School totally? I mean, how do we, you know, it's on city property. Do you know the agreement that we share with them? Because we tried to do something with parking buses and they wouldn't allow it.
Well, I know that any kind of renovation work or construction work we do on that site, it has to go through the city engineering and building office and planning office. It doesn't go through the county. I know that fire services are provided by Roanoke City and Roanoke County because they both showed up one time together.
We have to go to them for approval.
Yes, sir. So like we would submit plans to Roanoke County in most cases. Here, we would submit them to Roanoke City.
So some times where that's been an issue, like at one point, I don't know if you are aware of that, but like with the baseball and softball field, we used to run the track meets down there on that lower part, but there's no parking down there hardly. It was just an awful mess.
Nope.
So we wanted to put in there's a gravel parking lot above the road in that field, but in Roanoke City, you're not allowed to do that, for the gravel. So that became an issue. And then back when Cave Spring Middle School was being renovated and we had to, put the 6th and 7th graders back in the mobile unit park back behind, suddenly Roanoke City became very interested in everything. I mean, so it's a bear. And it really goes back to all your discussions about where BCAT ought to go, right? When our facilities are in a different locality, I mean, you do run into a lot of red tape that you wouldn't have in the county. So it does affect from time to time with that.
We should build all our facilities in other localities.
Item number 2.07.
Because then we take it off the
Discussion
off
of
the
proposed
rolls.
policy about financial responsibility for school digital signs and scoreboards. Dr. Nicely. I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh, no, you did exactly right.
My fault, I set him up for that.
How
Yes,
quick
you
can you
did.
get through this so we can get to the award ceremony?
You did, that was perfect.
Yeah.
So we can get to the award ceremony.
So just pass along a copy of what I developed working with our attorneys, language that, just for discussion purposes, again, this has been something that's been discussed, in previous board meetings about, what should be the responsibility for not only the roadside digital signs that schools, over the years have purchased, but also, scoreboards, as we were just talking about. So as you all have mentioned even this evening, just in the name of trying to develop some consistency, and again, we can't correct the past, but just moving forward, what kind of language can we put into place that would at least help schools, parent groups and that kind of thing who want to do different things know, what the school board's feeling is in terms of what the financial responsibility is. This is, some language that I just want to put for you for discussion purposes. I mean, obviously, you all need to decide what you're comfortable with, but I just want to get the discussion rolling formally in terms of some proposals. So, and the language probably matters less than just the concept. I mean, do you want to move forward with having a policy, around this concept? So in essence, just to be clear, roadside digital signs, we're talking about the typical, digital signs that schools will sometimes, purchase and put out, in front of the schools and with announcements and that kind of thing. So the proposal for your discussion would be that we clearly say that moving forward, that, as a school district, we'll pay for the purchase of replacement signs for the high schools, but, not for the middle schools and elementary schools. That's in keeping with our discussion previously, but again, y'all can debate it. And then secondly, on a similar note, in terms of scoreboards, this discussion came up most recently, like with the Bogle Field situation. And, Chris brought information to you in terms of issues with the life expectancy of some of these, graphic scoreboards. They're just not lasting very long. So, basically, in our previous discussions, we've kind of landed on, as a school division, we'll pay for the cost of a basic scoreboard, but in terms of anything beyond that, in terms of fancy graphics or whatever, that, we're just gonna be clear that we're not gonna take on that responsibility. So that's what we've tried to capture in terms of, a new policy, just to kind of lay out that expectation and that standard, for moving forward. And again, it'd be up to the pleasure of the board if you want to, adopt something like that or not.
Any discussion, questions?
And I know we just do the basic sign at Bogle in the end.
Bogle.
Yeah.
Bogle. Are we talking about, there's, obviously you can't put a number in here, but when you say basic, people understand what basic means in a policy. You're not concerned
Well,
about that?
and that's a great question, and to help clarify, that's why I added that last sentence about, not with graphic displays. I mean, I guess we can use different language, but that was an attempt to try to clarify
Yeah, because
this, but not this.
the semantics of
Right.
basics,
Yeah, 'cause,
everybody has
5
their
years from
own
now, yeah, somebody
definition
will-
of basic,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I guess we could say, basic scoreboard that displays the score and the time left, and you can kind of get into specifics, but,
Yeah.
I see, a couple things. We've got 3 high schools, or 3 middle schools that can take advantage of the high school sign. Northside on the same campus, William Byrd on the same campus, Glenver on the same campus with an elementary school. So those 3 schools could kind of take advantage of us having one sign, where Cave Spring with separate locations on their high school and middle school, those middle schools are kind of left out. And same with Hidden Valley.
you talk about
Just
for the
a-
roadside signs or the scoreboards?
The roadside,
Oh, right.
yeah, the
Right.
digital roadside.
That's
signs.
exactly right. Yeah, Glenver kind of has a shared one. Yeah, exactly, the shared campuses versus the others.
So 2 middle schools would be left out. 1 elementary school would be included. That's the only, Glenver's the only one on the same campus, correct?
Elementary wise, yes.
Just a thought.
Yeah, honestly, I hope I don't speak out of turn for parents at Hidden Valley Middle School or elementary school, but I really never had a hard time with my signs not being digital. I'm a pretty basic person,
Yeah.
but I like nice things, don't get me wrong. But for me, it was never an issue because someone, there's labor and time. I'm sure the person who puts the letters up doesn't love that job, but I don't see any need to go digital for my schools.
Well, not
I'm
to
sure I'll
try-
get some flack for that, by the way.
Well, but not to
I
try to,
just-
not to try to sway you either way, but what I always pointed out was, and it kind of goes back to, you asked earlier about Hidden Valley Middle School being in Roanoke City. There's really not a great place to put it where you've got like traffic stop to even read that kind of thing. So I've always
Like
kind
a
of.
digital sign?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was
yeah.
sort of.
Well, just in terms of cost, and, it's expensive, you have a bulb go out, you're looking at a couple $1,000s, I think we could use that, if we had all the money in the world, it would be great, but we could put the money in better places.
Yeah, I think the current policy to drill's fine.
So in this case, we go ahead and fix Glenver then?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right, that one's out.
Mm-hmm.
I was by there last night for their choir concert and
Okay.
noticed it, so, yeah.
I'm fine with this
I'm
policy.
good with it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm good.
Okay. Will that be adopted starting July 1?
Yeah, so,
So we need to go in and knock ours out real quick before.
If you want to go back to a basic one.
Yeah.
right. And I,
Before July 1, we can get the new digital ones.
Well, and one of the questions I had was, should this be a policy versus an admin reg? I really couldn't find because generally your regulations are kind of attached to a corresponding policy, and I really couldn't find a current policy that I felt like was a good fit. So I feel like this probably needs to be a policy, which means you do formally adopt it.
Yeah, because if you don't, you know what'll happen right behind us.
Yeah,
So in terms of scoreboards, what schools need new scoreboards? Are there any right now that are suffering with that issue?
Well, right now, I've ordered softball scoreboards for Northside and for Glenver Middle, waiting for those to be delivered. But I think the next scoreboard on my replacement list would be the Northside football stadium scoreboard. And after that, I'm waiting, Time Technologies is doing an audit on all, they do an inventory audit on all of our scoreboards in July. So when they do that inspection in July, they'll submit that report to us, and then we'll know which ones need to be replaced next. I believe Hidden Valley High School gymnasium scoreboards, they're having issues with those two scoreboards.
They are, yeah.
So I think those are on the list as well.
Those are on the list, okay. So if the boosters wanted to add extra money to that and make it
Something
really
fancy.
artsy fancy, they could, are you gonna put a definition on the
Or
amount
even
of
get a
money?
sponsor they could do.
Well, one question, if you do that, what about the maintenance? Like if it goes out, you
We have
know,
a contract with Time Technologies. and
well, I'm talking about the difference
For
in
the
like a
fancy part.
basic
Right.
sign versus
Oh.
a fancy
Oh, yeah.
sign. Then you're gonna wind up in a situation where it's gonna cost a lot more to replace it down the road.
That's
So I don't know
interesting.
how we would address that part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or fix it.
Right.
That's something to
Big.
include in,
Go back to a basic one, or they come up with the difference between the cost of a basic and.
And they have to
Fancy.
take care of the maintenance. It kind of goes back to our buildings everywhere, you know. It's nice that they give us the buildings, but then we're stuck with them. We have to maintain them.
I was
So-
at PH and I saw their scoreboard, big fancy, I mean, it was top of the line. And the advertising that they could roll on it was pretty quite, you know, impressive. So they do get fancy. But there's a hack for that where you could just buy, you know, a screen or a television and just roll it off of your laptop.
If it would help, and we could add language to say, you know, we're not responsible for the replacement cost or repair cost of the fancy ones, or something to that effect. I mean, if we need to specify that.
I think it's
Or
something.
Probably.
Probably,
Of a
yeah.
non-basic
We won't say
sign.
the fancy
Uh,
ones, but you know.
Yeah, you have to throw in there that you will cover the basic, but
Right.
not anything that might be an addition.
Right. And just, again, for consistency, we have a contract with Time Technologies, so if a school needs one repaired, they just need to contact Jeff Meacham in maintenance and put in the work order request, and then they'll take care of
Yes,
that
sir.
piece of it.
How long are the warranties on some of these scoreboards?
I do not know.
I mean, nowadays, you buy a TV and 2 years later, the technology, you can't even find the parts, you
Changes.
gotta go buy a new TV. That would be
And
my
that's
concern.
been the issue with these graphic display scoreboards,
Yeah.
they just go, they wear out and break easily.
That's
And
what
it
One
looks
seem
bad.
to be the days that you get 25 or 30 years out of a scoreboard.
Yeah.
Or an oven or a microwave.
Right.
That's
Well,
what
as
happened.
Mr. Hudson's mentioned several times, I mean, what you don't want is, you know, it's not a good look to have these things and they don't work. And that is the risk, you know, as far as the elementary schools with these signs. I mean, but this will at least say clearly, hey, just know that y'all need to plan for the replacement if you choose to get an elementary. We're not prohibiting you from getting one, but you just need to plan for the replacement cost.
Right, could you write something up about what we just discussed?
Include the
Add
maintenance piece?
Something
Yeah.
about that, yeah.
Yep. So what we'll do is we have, you know, other policy updates and so forth that we need to, you know, bring forward. So we'll just, this one, we need to, you know, this is a new one, so we'll just include that and get that language corrected and send it back out to you for review before we do so.
Sounds good.
Very good.
Just got one more thing for Mr. Lowe while it's on my mind. Can you take a look at that sprinkler system at the top field at Glenver
Yes, sir.
and see about that? Because I spoke with Mr. Murray yesterday and there's some
I talked to
issues.
him today.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yes, sir.
Appreciate that, because I know they've already allotted a certain amount of money to get that field worked on, and I feel like it would be in vain if we didn't have the proper
Absolutely.
water,
Unless
especially in
you run
the summer
over and
months.
fell over.
Thank you.
All right. With that, meeting adjourned and on
Just
to the
enough time to
golden
get the golden
apple.
apple, yeah.